Chapter 2198. Big Yellow howled and bared his sharp white teeth. He rushed up and bit the drunkard's thigh. The drunkard gasped but didn't dare to move. He bared his teeth and said to Lin Sun, "Now you know how powerful Big Yellow is?" He was in so much pain that cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Even Lin Sun felt his heart ache. Big Yellow was obviously a different kind of dog. He was very arrogant and very cruel. A boat carrying 2 people and a dog quickly disappeared into the depths of the indefinite blood sea. By the sea, the Sword Emperor of Heaven Convergence and Buddhist Emperor of Heaven Convergence appeared out of thin air. Looking at the depths of the sea, their expressions turned gloomy. That son of AB*TCH is simply too much. Buddhist Emperor of Heaven Convergence gritted his teeth, his heart full of anger. He had been chased by Big Yellow for a period of time. His body was full of bite wounds. He only managed to get rid of Big Yellow when he fled to the Hidden Land realm. Bronze Sparrow Tower took the remnants of Fengtsuan Mountain away. Do you think the master of Bronze Sparrow Tower is really planning to go against Shi Tiandi? Asked the Sword Emperor of Heaven Convergence. Buddhist Emperor of Heaven Convergence said coldly, "Go against? I really can't see how the master of Bronze Sparrow Tower has the confidence to go against Shi Tiandi. If he's really crazy enough to do this, Bronze Sparrow Tower will be removed from the 3 dark forces." The Sword Emperor of Heaven Convergence was silent for a moment. "Let's not talk about this. I heard that the primordial ancestral ground of Fog Hidden House is in the depths of the indefinite blood sea. Why did the polearm of divine destruction and that dog bring this kid there?" Very few people knew that the Misty House was the core power of the Bronze Sparrow Tower. Its power was spread all over the starry ancient path. I only know that back in the ancient times, the master of Bronze Sparrow Tower proved his way in the primordial ancestral ground of Fog Hidden House and set foot on the Emperor's Road. Buddhist Emperor of Heaven Convergence said in a low voice. The Sword Emperor of Heaven Convergence frowned. "You suspect that the master of Bronze Sparrow Tower wants to give this kid a chance to prove his way and become emperor? Who knows? The world only knows that the master of Bronze Sparrow Tower is the proudest person since ancient times. But in my opinion, his shrewdness is also unparalleled." Buddha Emperor Tiandu said, "Over the countless years, no one knows where he came from, and no one knows how he managed to spread the power of the Hidden Mist House to every world in the ancient path heavens. Furthermore, no one knows what he's plotting. But now I vaguely understand." Speaking of this, Buddha Emperor of Tiandu's eyes flashed with a strange light. "Do you still remember that Lin Sun, who seemed to be an insignificant chess piece, played a vital role in the process of the Dozhan Emperor defeating the nameless Supreme Emperor in the All-Heaven game?" Heaven Cluster Sword Emperor seemed to have understood and said in astonishment, "You're saying that Bronze Sparrow Tower Master also wants to use this child as a chess piece and imitate Dozhan Emperor's actions to compete with Heavenly Emperor Shi Tian? If this was true, just thinking about it made one's heart tremble." Buddha Monarch Tiandu took a deep breath and said, "Whether it is true or not, we will be able to find out when Heavenly Monarch Shi returns from the ruins of returning. Shi Tiandi is not the previous nameless sovereign. If Copper Sparrow Tower Master really dares to do this, he will definitely be digging his own grave." Heaven Cluster Sword Emperor said resolutely. The two chatted for a while and then turned to leave. The uncertain blood sea was the core of the Hidden Mist House. It was not a place they dared to break into without permission. On the same day, Heaven Cluster Sword Emperor and Buddha Emperor of Tiandu released the news to the outside world together that Lin Sun, the future leader of Mountain of Mind and Heart, who was wanted by the whole world, had obtained the protection of Bronze Sparrow Tower, one of the 3 dark giants. All of a sudden, the dark world was stirred. This news was simply earth-shattering and pushed Bronze Sparrow Tower to the teeth of the storm. Is Bronze Sparrow Tower crazy? Aren't they afraid of being regarded as an enemy by the whole world? Everyone felt incredulous. Mountain of Mind and Heart was wanted by Heavenly Emperor Shi Tian himself, but Bronze Sparrow Tower dared to protect Lin Sun. This was clearly against Heavenly Emperor Shirtian. Some time ago, when Heavenly Emperor Shirtian came to the Dark World, only Bronze Sparrow Tower Master refused to pay a visit. He had already offended Heavenly Emperor Shirtian. Now Bronze Sparrow Tower under his command still dares to protect Lin Sun. This indeed shows that Bronze Sparrow Tower Master really intends to break off relations with Heavenly Emperor Shirtian. Why on earth does Bronze Sparrow Tower Master do this? How could a person like him do such a stupid thing? There must be some secrets hidden in this. Countless people were discussing and speculating. They were all shocked. Bronze Sparrow Tower was one of the 3 giants of the Dark World. It had a huge influence and a strong foundation. Different from the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect and the Hidden Land Realm, Bronze Sparrow Tower always adhered to the word justice when doing things, and it had an extremely high reputation in the hearts of the people. No one had expected that Bronze Sparrow Tower would protect Lin Sun, the successor of Mountain of Mind and Heart, at this critical juncture. Such an action was no different from courting death. At the wondrous Lotus gathering that was being held, all the ancient orthodoxies and forces from all over the world were also shocked by this news, and they were discussing it incessantly. If the heavens want him dead, he will be driven mad. Bronze Sparrow Tower Master is too arrogant. If he wants to use Lin Sun as a chess piece and imitate the actions of the Dojan Emperor, then he is gravely mistaken. Just wait, Bronze Sparrow Tower is not far from destruction. The great figures of those ancient forces all made similar inferences. No one thought that Bronze Sparrow Tower Master had any foundation that could go against Heavenly Emperor Shirtian. And when Heavenly Emperor Shirtian returned, it was destined to be the day of Bronze Sparrow Tower's destruction. It's impossible for Heavenly Emperor Shirtian to escape from the ultimate before the 3rd calamity of oblivion arrives. In that secret realm, Bronze Sparrow Tower Master's eyes were filled with indifference. He had long since understood the reactions of the outside world, but he did not care at all. Everyone said that he had gone mad, and those great forces said that he was courting death, but only he himself knew what he was doing. "Why are you so sure?" She, who sat opposite him, said in a cold voice. Bronze Sparrow Tower Master's bearing was casual, and his voice was also very casual. He said indifferently, "Because I grew up in the ultimate, and I know better than Heavenly Emperor Shirtian what will happen once someone like him enters." At this point, Bronze Sparrow Tower Master seemed to have thought of something and said, "A long time ago, there was a fellow from the other side of the starry sky who entered the ultimate. That person called himself Luo Tongtian, and whether it was his foundation or his spirit, they could be said to be boundlessly terrifying. He did not know that when he talked about Luo Tongtian, a layer of waves arose in Shi's heart. Luo Tongtian. Of course, it was the master of the heaven-accessing mystic realm, one of the ancestors of Lin Sun's mother, Luo Qingxuan. She did not expect to hear the 2nd successor of Mount Fangtsuan mention this name at this time. At that time, I had just entered the sect and I was still a youth. But Luo Tongtian was already a supreme figure that even my master regarded him with respect. At that time, he should have already broken through the boundaries of the progenitor realm and stepped onto an even more supreme path of cultivation. At this point, Bronze Sparrow Tower Master stared at Shi and said, "But do you know what he encountered after entering the ultimate?" She said indifferently, "Do you think I'll be very curious?" Bronze Sparrow Tower Master smiled slightly, appearing extremely conceited. "Why don't you guess?" A strange look suffused Shi's eyes. "What if I guess correctly?" Bronze Sparrow Tower Master laughed again and said, "If I guess correctly, I'll answer the question you want to know the most." She said without hesitation. He was scared off by the master of Mount Fangtsuan. Bronze Sparrow Tower Master. He fell silent with a blank expression. He, who was originally extremely conceited, revealed a rare look of disbelief. This appearance made Shi feel an indescribable sense of comfort. The man in front of him was arrogant to the bone, to the point where he considered everyone beneath him. But now, he had finally suffered a setback. This feeling was truly delightful. I understand. You already knew about this long ago. After a while, Bronze Sparrow Tower Master sighed emotionally. She said directly, "Now, it's time for you to answer me. Lin Sun is your junior brother. What exactly do you want to do?" The master of Copper Sparrow Pavilion didn't seem to be surprised, and he thought for a moment before he said, "Mount Innerheart has been destroyed. No matter if it's my eldest senior brother or the other junior brothers and sisters, perhaps they'll be able to hold their own, but the path they seek towards the Tao was deduced by my master a long time ago when they joined the sect. It's the same for me, Zhongqiu. However, junior brother is different. There are 50 great Taos and 49 heavenly evolutions. His path of Tao is different from us successors of Mount Fengtsuan from the very beginning. It's also full of variables. In the very beginning of the primordial era, Master once deduced the source of order of the heavenly Tao. He paid a heavy price and had no choice but to leave in the end. Before leaving, Master left behind a Tao hymn. You know this Tao hymn. It's related to the eternal sovereign path. Over the countless years, I've presided over the world of darkness for the sake of waiting for the lone lotus that Master spoke of. Upon hearing this, she could not help but ask, "You're saying that Lin Sun is this lotus?" Bronze Sparrow Tower Master shook his head. It's hard to say. The eternal sovereign path has yet to appear, so I can't be certain. Don't forget that my master also paid a huge price to deduce this. However, in the end, he only left behind a Tao hymn. After a pause, he said seriously, "However, I'll give it a try and take a look." There was a trace of determination in his eyes. "What if it's proven that he isn't?" she asked. Bronze Sparrow Tower Master fell silent for a long time before saying, "We'll talk about it when the time comes." She did not ask any more questions. She could already tell that the proud and conceited second successor of Mount Innerheart had a knot in his heart over the countless years. It was that lone lotus that would bloom on the path of an undying paragon. She did not speak, but Bronze Sparrow Tower Master took the initiative to say, "Don't you want to know why Heavenly Emperor sure rushed to the sinkhole?" She casually said, "If you want to say it, you will naturally say it. If you don't want to say it, given your pride and arrogance, who can force you to say it?" "Then I won't say it," Bronze Sparrow Tower Master said without hesitation. She was stunned, clearly caught off guard. He frowned and said, "Is there any meaning in playing this kind of child's play? I just want to see if there will be a time when you can't guess it," Bronze Sparrow Tower Master said solemnly. Copper Sparrow Tower Master spoke solemnly, but as he spoke, he couldn't help but laugh. Only then did she understand that Bronze Sparrow Tower Master was taking revenge on him for making him suffer a setback. "Childish." 2 words came out of her mouth. Bronze Sparrow Tower Master laughed even more happily. He laughed so hard that he rocked back and forth, completely losing his bearing. It had been a very, very long time since he had laughed so loudly. Chapter 2199. After a while, the Copper Sparrow Tower Master finally stopped smiling and said, "In these years, I have rarely joked with others. There are not many people in this world who are worth me joking with." There was pride in his voice, but there was also a trace of disappointment. It was lonely at the top, and there were only a few people who could speak with him. She only looked at him coldly and did not say anything. In the end, Copper Sparrow Tower Master decided to take a step back and said, "The answer is very simple. I had my subordinates spread the news and told Celestial Emperor Shi that Luo Tongtian had gone to the ruins of End. Then, he immediately rushed over." She was stunned. "Why?" Tower Master Bronze Sparrow said casually, "Just like the previous venerable sovereign, Shi Tiandi came from the other side of the starry sky. He came to the ancient path of the starry sky to regain control of the forbidden power of order and to search for a treasure called the heaven-accessing secret realm. and this heaven-accessing secret land is related to Luo Tongtian. Xi's eyes narrowed imperceptibly as she said, "How did you know?" The Copper Sparrow Tower Master said, "In ancient times, there was a fellow who was known as the Uncrowned Emperor. He used the lifeless killing formation, which was ranked 9th in the heavens, to stir up a storm of blood in the Tao battles of the emperors. He was also the only person who had never stepped into the martial emperor realm and was able to kill a martial emperor as a quasi-emperor. People called him the Deer Formation Emperor. But no one knew that Array Emperor Deer also came from the other side of the galaxy. When the Copper Sparrow Pavilion Master said that, he revealed a meaningful expression, as if he was waiting for Xi to take the initiative to ask him. However, she looked indifferent and answered without asking, "His name is Lu Boya. Of course, he knows best about the heaven-accessing place and Luo Tongtian. Strictly speaking, he raised your junior brother Lin Sun." Pavilion Master Bronze Sparrow. The silent atmosphere was slightly awkward. After a while, Copper Sparrow Tower Master shook his head and said, "Forget it, let's not talk about this. It's too boring." Boring? Xi's lips curled up into an undetectable smile. "It should be very disappointing." Pavilion Master Bronze Sparrow. "However," she said leisurely, "there's no need to feel embarrassed. I just happen to know some things." Copper Sparrow Tower Master suddenly felt that this conversation really couldn't continue. Indefinite blood sea. The waves of the blood-colored sea rose and fell, seemingly boundless. After traveling for an unknown period of time, Big Yellow, which was crouching at the bow, let out a howl that sounded like a wolf. Howl! Wind and thunder raged on the surface of the blood-colored sea, forming a huge blood-colored whirlpool. The drunkard steered the skiff and instantly charged into it. When Lin's field of vision became clear, he noticed that he'd already arrived in a secret realm. The heavens and the earth were vast, and auspicious clouds curled up in the air. Moreover, numerous mountains that were suffused with divine radiance and auspicious rays stood towering on the ground. On the peak of the mountain, there were rows of ancient buildings. "Sir Lin, we finally meet again." A voice that was pleasing to the ear with a unique magnetism resounded, and it was misty like smoke. A rain of light appeared in the sky, and it formed the outline of a graceful figure. A blood-red umbrella, a green dress, and black hair that fluttered in the wind. Her entire body emanated a bewitching and breathtaking charm. It was Qing Ying. When Lin Sun first arrived at the Hongmeng world, he had met her in an underground world controlled by the Misty Hidden House. Later, Qing Ying gave the bronze mirror to Lin Sun and told him that if he could meet him in a secret place in the future, he would tell him a thing that would bring him no harm. At that time, Lin Sun didn't take it seriously and just thought it was normal. But now, all the way to the secret place, Lin Sun found that Qing Ying's identity was not simple, and the misty hidden house behind her was even more mysterious. Lin Sun turned his head, only to find that the drunkard and the big yellow dog who came with him had already disappeared without a trace. "Don't worry, Sir Lin. Please come with me." Qing Ying's voice was soft. She held the blood umbrella and turned to walk forward. Her long black hair fluttered in the wind. Even if they were very close, people couldn't see her face clearly. But her every move gave people a soul-stirring, bewitching aura. Lin Sun thought about it and followed her. This secret realm was extremely spacious and quiet. Lin Sun didn't see anyone along the way. It seemed that there were only him and Qing Ying leading the way in the world. When they came to a palace on the mountainside and invited Lin Sun to take a seat, Qing Ying put away the blood umbrella, which was as red as rouge, in her hand. She was dressed in a cyan dress. Her skin was white and dazzling like mutton-fat jade. Her soft black hair was loose, revealing a beautiful oval face. Her eyelashes were fine, and her eyes were big and deep like a clear spring. Her facial features were delicate and beautiful, and her whole body exuded a kind of extreme, bewitching beauty. She was like a peerless demon who could bring disaster to a country and people, so beautiful that it made people's heart tremble. This was the first time that Lin Sun saw Qin Ying's real face. He couldn't help being stunned by her beauty, which was particularly unique. "Do you know that Qin Ying has been waiting for you for a long time?" Qin Ying stretched out her white and slender hand and poured a cup of tea for Lin Sun with the cyan jade pot. Then she said softly, "Fortunately, you're not late." The tea fragrance was faint and misty, revealing a refreshing taste. The woman in front of him was as stunning as a painting, and her voice was as sweet as the sounds of nature. In the hall, there were only two of them. The atmosphere was so quiet, which made people unconsciously relaxed. "What are you waiting for?" Lin Sun asked. "To clear up your doubts." Qin Ying's lips curled up into a smile. His pair of clear eyes shined with intelligence. Lin Sun couldn't help smiling and said seriously, "I do have many doubts in my heart." Qin Ying stared at Lin Sun and said, "Before we talk about business, let me introduce myself. My name is Qin Ying, the young master of Hidden Mist House. I grew up here since I was a child. Over the years, I have only done one thing, that is to collect and understand all the news about you." Lin Sun narrowed his eyes. "Me? Yes." Qin Ying nodded and said, "I also know a little about the things you want to know." Lin Sun smiled and said, "Then I really have to ask for your advice. From arriving at the unstable blood sea to meeting the drunkard and the big yellow dog, there were too many doubts in his heart." "Where is this place?" he asked directly. Qin Ying was not surprised and said softly, "The misty hidden house's origin ancestral land is also called the Land of Darkness. The misty hidden house is the core power of the Copper Sparrow Pavilion. Very few people in this world know that the misty hidden house's power has already spread across the entire ancient path of the starry sky." Lin Sun was suddenly enlightened, but he couldn't help being shocked. Who could believe that Bronze Sparrow Tower, one of the three dark giants, had already spread its tentacles all over the starry sky? Lin Sun couldn't help asking, "What about you? Why do you collect and pay attention to my news?" Qin Ying's eyes were full of brilliance. "You should have some guesses in your heart, right? Entrusted by someone?" "Yes." "Who?" "Head of Bronze Sparrow Tower." "Him." Lin Sun was shocked, and his black eyes were full of brilliance. "Could he be?" Qin Ying nodded again. "Young master's guess is correct. The one who entrusted me with this is the second successor of Mount Heart, named Zhong Qiu, who is also young master's senior brother." Lin Sun couldn't help sighing. "So that's how it is. I finally understand." Head of Bronze Sparrow Tower was regarded as the proudest person in all the heavens. Not long ago, he had refused to pay a visit to Shi Tiandi, which caused a sensation in the dark world. At that time, Lin Sun admired him greatly and thought that Head of Bronze Sparrow Tower was unparalleled in courage. But now that he thought about it, this was a matter of course. How could the second successor of Mount Heart bow to Shi Tiandi? Moreover, when he came to the unstable blood sea this time, the drunkard and the big yellow dog, he saw both had unimaginably terrifying combat power. It was impossible for a Qin Ying to order these two people to play the role of guide, and only Head of Bronze Sparrow Tower could order this man and dog to do things. Lin Sun thought of Third Sister Ruosu's words and sighed with emotion. Third Sister was right. When he arrived in the Dark World, there was no need to look for second brother at all. Why? Because he was head of Bronze Sparrow Tower, and his forces had already spread all over the heavens. After a while, Lin Sun asked, "Why didn't you tell me this when we first met?" Back then, young master arrived in the primordial world with the identity of Yu Xian, and the order I received was only to hand over the bronze mirror to young master. I didn't dare to make decisions on other matters. Qin Ying said, "Later, I learned that when young master went to the primordial world, you already had an important task to complete, some tasks assigned by the seniors of Mount Heart, such as participating in the Tao Discussion Conference, entering the forbidden area of ancient immortals, and fighting for the Chaos Treasure. At such a time, Head of Bronze Sparrow Tower naturally wouldn't interfere." Lin Sun only then understood. Back then, senior brother Li Xianwei, senior brother Pu Zhen, and senior brother Jun Huan had all protected him all the way, so that he could arrive at the primordial world smoothly. In fact, this was already equivalent to a plan. In order to be able to seize the chaos treasure in that game of chess, and help eldest brother defeat the nameless Supreme Emperor. Head of Bronze Sparrow Tower was his second senior brother, so it was impossible for him not to know these things. Perhaps because of this, Head of Bronze Sparrow Tower only asked Qing Ying to give Lin Sun a bronze mirror, and didn't talk about other things, so as not to destroy Li Xuanwei's plan. After figuring this out, another doubt came to Lin Sun's mind, and he asked, "So, I can see. Second senior brother now?" Qing Ying shook his head. "It's not the right time. In other words, young master hasn't been recognized yet." "Recognized?" Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. Qing Ying said, "Head of Bronze Sparrow Tower once asked me to pass a message to you. 1 year later, when the Nirvana heaven appears, he wants to see your performance." Lin Sun was quite surprised and said in a daze, "Is it because I haven't been recognized by him that he doesn't want to meet me?" Compared with other senior brothers and sisters of Mount Hart, his second senior brother was really arrogant. "It's not that I don't want to, but the time is not right." Chapter 2200. Then, Qing Ying told Lin one thing. A few months ago, after Lin killed Emperor Baki, the Divine Sunshine Sect sent Tian Song Sword Emperor and the Hidden Land Realm sent Tiandu Buddha Lord to kill Lin. Both of them were horrible existences in the three masters of assassination. Each of them was more powerful than Emperor Baki, and they were good at assassination. But on the way, both of them were stopped. It was Martial Emperor Divine Destruction and Big Yellow, who were under the command of the Copper Sparrow Tower. Knowing this, Lin Sun felt a chill down his spine. Only then did he realize that his second senior brother had already helped him resolve a killing disaster in the dark. It was also at this time that Lin Sun knew the identity of the drunkard and the big yellow dog who had received him on the unstable Blood Sea. He also understood his second senior brother's intentions. It was not that he didn't want to see them, but he just wanted to see how capable he was. And the Nirvana-free heaven that would appear in a year was a test. After thinking for a while, Lin Sun asked, "You once said that if I came to meet you, you should tell me something that would bring me no harm. What is it?" Qing Ying smiled and said, "Young master's second senior brother, Senior Zhongqiu, proved his Tao and became an emperor in this hidden place, embarking on the ultimate emperor's path. Now that young master is a peak third heaven quasi-emperor, you must be making preparations to prove your Tao and become an emperor." This good news is related to this. Even though Lin Sun was mentally prepared, he was still shocked by these words. It had something to do with proving his Tao and becoming an emperor? This was a good thing that he had never thought of. "Is this also arranged by my second senior brother?" Lin Sun asked. Qing Ying nodded and said, "It does have something to do with Senior Zhongqiu, but it also has something to do with someone you didn't expect." Lin Sun was stunned. "Please enlighten me." "Formation Emperor Lu." Qing Ying gently spat out these 3 words, his starry eyes full of respect. Lin Sun's hand, which had just picked up the teacup, suddenly froze and asked, "Who are you talking about?" Qing Ying said seriously, "Formation Emperor Lu, that is, Master Lu who raised you." Lin Sun's heart was in turmoil and his eyes flickered. How could the secret place of the Misty House be related to Master Lu, a good thing related to Taoism and becoming an emperor? At this moment, he couldn't help but be stunned. Over the years, Lin Sun was sure that Master Lu, who had been hunted by the Star Destroyer, was not dead. But he had no idea where Master Lu had gone. Not a single clue was left behind. The Qing Ying's magnetic and unique voice sounded, "Array Emperor Lu, also known as the Crownless Emperor by all the experts in the world." Very few people know that Array Emperor Lu has another identity, the Hidden Mist House Master. If it weren't for him, the hidden fog house wouldn't have been able to spread its power across the entire starry sky ancient path. Even Senior Zhongqiu thinks that if it weren't for the limitation of cultivation, Array Emperor Lu's achievements in the Great Tao wouldn't be any lower than his. After all, in the Tao War of Emperors in ancient times, Array Emperor Lu was able to set up the lifeless killing formation, which was ranked 9th in the world. He killed 5 emperors and seriously injured 8 emperors, which made the whole starry sky tremble. It's conceivable that if Array Emperor Lu really became an emperor, how powerful he would be. In the end, Qing Ying's voice couldn't help but have a trace of leisurely fascination, without concealing his inner reverence and admiration. Lin Sun listened in a daze. What came to his mind was the grumpy and surly old man in the mine prison when he was a child, Master Lu, who was extremely demanding on his cultivation of spiritual tattoos. It turned out that he was not only the teacher of Zhao Yuanji of Xiao Empire, but also the founder of Green Deer School and the inheritance of 9 changes of Robbing Dragon in the commune of spiritual tattooists. He was also the uncrowned emperor, whose name once shook the starry sky, the master of the Dark World's hidden mist house. Lin Sun asked, "What about you? What's your relationship with Master Lu?" "Me?" Qing Ying thought for a while and then said, "Since I was sensible, I helped him take care of various affairs of the hidden mist house. I once wanted to worship him as my teacher, but he never agreed. However, he didn't interfere with me reading some classics related to spiritual tattoos written by him." There was a trace of sadness in her starry eyes. "In my heart, I have always regarded him as my father or my teacher, but it seems that he has always regarded me as a maid." Lin Sun was silent. For this kind of thing, he couldn't say anything. Later, after the Tao War of Emperors in ancient times, he disappeared. Senior Zhongqiu once went to look for him, but he didn't find him. It was only in recent years that I learned that he went to a place called Xiao Empire. Speaking of this, Qing Ying looked at Lin Sun. "Child, you should understand now that after the Tao War of Emperors, Array Emperor Lu went to the place where you came from when you were young." Lin Sun couldn't help sighing. How could he not understand? These are the classics written by Array Emperor Lu, all related to spiritual tattoos. They have been kept by me all these years, and now it's time to return them to their original owners. Qing Ying took out a piece of jade made of animal bones and handed it to Lin Sun. It records the lifeless killing formation ranked 9th in all heavens, and also the incomplete formation deduced by Array Emperor Lu, called Falling Tao and Dying Heaven. Although it's only an incomplete formation that hasn't been completely perfected, its power is far above that of the lifeless killing formation. Lin Sun held the jade slip in his hand and sensed it with his spiritual awareness. Lines of dense Taoist patterns and textual annotations were reflected in his mind. Whether it was the tracks of those Taoist patterns or the handwriting, they all brought a long-lost sense of familiarity to Lin Sun. He didn't need to judge at all to know that it was written by Master Lu. "Thank you very much." Lin Sun took a deep breath, put away the jade slip and thanked him. Qing Ying smiled and said, "Don't mention it. My duty is to work for Array Emperor Lu." The two chatted while drinking tea. Lin Sun soon learned that she had been rescued by second senior brother Zhongqiu, and was now recuperating in a safe place. Star Yin was lucky to survive, but her whereabouts were unknown. According to Qing Ying, the forces of Bronze Sparrow Tower were searching for her everywhere, and as long as they found her, they would kill her at once. However, Qing Ying also said that second senior brother Zhongqiu suspected that this woman had left to seek help from Shi Tiandi with the help of the Forbidden Order. In any case, after knowing that she was fine, Lin Sun finally felt relieved, and he felt unprecedentedly relaxed. At the same time, Lin Sun also learned some secrets related to the third tribulation of oblivion. When the tribulation came, Nirvana heaven would appear. It was a world related to the immortal road of Supreme Venerable, and it was derived from the original order of the starry sky ancient path. This also meant that the forbidden order controlled by Shi Tiandi couldn't interfere. Different from other secret realms, Nirvana Heaven was very likely to have the law of samsara of time. The test faced by the strong who entered it would also become extremely dangerous. Once one entered samsara, there were only two outcomes. One was to sink into it and lose oneself. The other was to undergo an extreme transformation and attain grand rebirth in one's cultivation, allowing one to escape from it. Besides the test of samsara, Nirvana Heaven was filled with extremely terrifying killing tribulations. There would be the invasion of heavenly demons and the ambush of terrifying figures from the starry sky. All of this was because the immortal road of Supreme Venerable was too terrifying. Once one became the lone lotus that bloomed on this path, one would possess the terrifying ability of being eternal and supreme in the immortal Emperor realm. Lin Sun couldn't help but be shocked when he found out about these secrets. Earlier, he'd already found out about some information related to the third tribulation of oblivion, but most of it wasn't detailed, and no one was able to explain it. For example, the core objective of the Wonder Lotus Banquet that was being held in Mirastar City right now was to discuss some secrets and matters related to Nirvana Heaven. It was absolutely impossible for such insider information to be spread to the outside world. At this moment, everything that Qi Ying told him was undoubtedly insider information, and it was something that Lin Sun was utterly unaware of in the past. When he thought about how the immortal road of Supreme Venerable was actually related to the samsara laws of time, and would even draw the ambush of heavenly demons and the starry sky from the starry sky, Lin Sun's heart roiled. Merely the words eternal and supreme were too heaven-defying indeed, and it was too maddening and covetous. However, all of this is merely speculation before the arrival of the third tribulation of oblivion. Because Nirvana Heaven has utterly never appeared in the past, and no one dares to determine exactly what will happen within it. Qi Ying said, "The only thing we know is that if one wants to possess the qualification and opportunity to enter Nirvana Heaven when it descends, then one must satisfy two conditions." "Which two conditions?" asked Lin Sun. "The first is for experts that have stepped onto the path of oblivion. Regardless of their cultivation, even cultivators of the lower 5 realms have the qualification to enter. The second is for figures that have stepped foot into the immortal Emperor realm. So long as one's strength is within the scope of the 9th level of the immortal Emperor realm, then one can enter." As soon as Qi Ying finished speaking, Lin Sun's heart sank. Great Emperor Baki was in existence at the 8th level of the Emperor realm, and his strength was already terrifying to the extreme. Lin Sun had exerted all his ability before barely defeating Great Emperor Baki. If a formidable expert at the 9th level of the Emperor realm participated in the competition for Nirvana Heaven, then who could be a match for them? On the ancient starry sky path, perhaps there were extremely few old freaks at the 9th level of the Emperor realm. But when the Nirvana of freedom appeared, how could these old monsters resist the temptation of becoming immortal, invincible, and supreme? Even if other experts participated in it, how could they compete? It was no different than courting death. Qi Ying seemed to have discerned the worry in Lin Sun's heart, and he said in a light voice, "Young master, you don't have to worry about this. The stronger one's strength is, the more terrifying the dangers one suffers. If ordinary experts are like fireflies, then these old freaks are like bright lamps that draw the most terrifying dangers onto them. P.S. There will be 5 updates this weekend, and there will be another major update at the end of the month. There will be updates from time to time during this month." Chapter 2201. Lin Sun's expression flickered. Nirvana, the path of immortality, the test of time and samsara, this was a great creation from the power of order of the starry sky ancient path, but it was also an unpredictable disaster. Even the old antiques within the 9th level of the Emperor realm would participate in it. One could imagine how cruel and terrifying the competition would be. Who would be able to become the lone lotus? Child, is there anything else you want to ask? Qi Ying poured another cup of tea for Lin Sun. Her every move was breathtakingly beautiful. Lin Sun woke up from his contemplation and said, "When I came here, someone said that someone in the dark world is waiting for me to solve the problem. Do you know what that means?" Qi Ying was stunned and shook her head. "I really don't know." Although Lin Sun was mentally prepared, he still couldn't help feeling a little disappointed. What did the young man mean? Who in the dark world needed him to solve the problem? "Are you done?" Big Yellow's wolf-like howl sounded outside the hall. Lin Sun immediately woke up from his contemplation. "Child, in the period before the third tribulation of oblivion, Senior Polearm and the others will take you to the purgatory of darkness for training. This is also an opportunity that Senior Zhongqiu has prepared for you." As Qi Ying spoke, he stood up and opened the scarlet-red umbrella. Back then, Senior Zhongqiu also proved his Dao there. Purgatory of darkness? Lin Sun followed Qi Ying out of the hall while thinking. Outside the hall, the drunkard and Big Yellow were already waiting. "Kid, although you are Master's junior brother in name, I won't take you seriously before getting Master's approval." Big Yellow held his head high, his face full of pride. "Oh, don't worry, I definitely won't take you seriously either." Lin Sun laughed. He really wanted to kill this arrogant Big Yellow. It was too arrogant and gave off an aura that deserved a beating. "Young fella, are you out of your mind? How dare you talk to me like that?" Big Yellow's eyes were fierce, and it was fierce. Lin Sun was still smiling. "You're not a human. If I take you seriously, isn't it the same as calling you a dog?" Puff. The drunkard immediately burst into laughter. Acting like a dog? What an image! Qi Ying next to him was obviously trying to hold back her laughter. She didn't expect that Lin Sun was so bold. But it made sense. Zhongqiu was his senior brother. No matter how arrogant this dog was, how dare he offend Zhongqiu? Howl! Big Yellow bit the drunkard's thigh, causing the latter to gasp in pain. He said in exasperation, "Big Yellow, what has it got to do with me? Why are you biting me?" Big Yellow responded fiercely, "Based on my identity, how can I bully a weak junior? So what if I bite you when you smile?" The drunkard's face darkened. Lin Sun was a little embarrassed. "Big Yellow, it's not right to bite people." Big Yellow bit the drunkard hard again and said, "I'm biting people for no reason. You're not convinced? Bite me." The drunkard looked like he wanted to cry but had no tears. The man and the dog were at each other's throats, but he was the unlucky one who was stuck in the middle. Seeing that Lin Sun was about to say something, he hurriedly said, "Young friend, let's go." He was really worried that Lin Sun would say something to stimulate Big Yellow to bite him again. "Okay," Lin Sun agreed without hesitation. Big Yellow said arrogantly, "Boy, don't be complacent. Don't cry and beg me to save you when we enter the purgatory of darkness." Lin Sun directly retorted, "A good dog doesn't stand in the way. Lead the way." Big Yellow was so angry that he bared his teeth and pounced on the drunkard with a howl. The drunkard had already sensed the danger and rushed to the distance. The thick blood color pervaded the sea. A huge whirlpool slowly rotated, like a tunnel leading to the depths of the sea, suspended there. Howl bursts of ghostly wails and wolf howls came from the depths of the whirlpool, making people shudder. This was the entrance to the purgatory of darkness. At the beginning of the primeval times, after the first tribulation of oblivion erupted, it caused the world of darkness to fall into great destruction, and numerous terrifying existences that were taken to be like gods were buried beneath this tribulation. From then on, the world of darkness was taken to be the place where the gods were buried. The drunkard stood on the side of the whirlpool and explained to Lin Sun. "This purgatory of darkness is a primeval ruin left behind after the first tribulation of oblivion, and numerous ferocious spirits are buried beneath it. All of them possessed terrifying cultivations above the Emperor realm when they were alive, and they were formidable like gods. After countless years of changes, These evil spirits suppressed here have also undergone many transformations. Some evil spirits have become stronger than when they were alive. However, you don't have to worry. This purgatory of darkness is divided into 18 layers, and the evil spirits distributed in each layer are different. For you, it shouldn't be a problem to enter the upper 9 layers. Back then, His Honor entered the 9th layer alone, proved his way there, and set foot on the Emperor Road. You are now at the 3rd heaven of Quasi-Emperor realm. According to His Honor, the strength you possess should be above his at that time. You still have a great chance to enter the 9th layer. Hearing this, Lin Sun roughly understood. However, just as he was about to ask some more questions, Big Yellow next to him lifted his leg and put him into the whirlpool. He was completely defenseless. Wait till I come back, I'll definitely stew a dog like you. In the depths of the whirlpool, Lin Sun's exasperated voice sounded. Kid, you'd better think about how not to be tortured to death. Big Yellow looked up to the sky and laughed. His dog face was filled with complacency and arrogance. Is this really okay? The drunkard let out a long sigh, somewhat worried. The deeper you go in the purgatory of darkness, the more terrifying it is. If something happens to that kid, I'm sure that His Honor will definitely stew you. Big Yellow's body stiffened. His dog face was gloomy and uncertain. After a while, he said, Don't worry, I know Master's nature the best. Since he dared to let this kid come, it proves that this kid already has the ability to survive in the 9th layer of the purgatory of darkness. What's more, didn't I also survive in the purgatory of darkness? The drunkard's expression became strange. He remembered something from the past. A long time ago, this Big Yellow was brought here by His Honor. No matter what, Big Yellow refused to enter the purgatory of darkness. He hugged His Honor's thigh and cried. But in the end, he still went in. He was kicked into the purgatory of darkness by His Honor. Later, when Big Yellow returned, he looked miserable. He was all skin and bones, his body was covered with scars, and his dog leg was broken. It took him a whole year to recover his spirit. From then on, whenever Big Yellow heard the words purgatory of darkness, his tail would uncontrollably clamp between his legs. Thinking of this, the drunkard couldn't help but glance at Big Yellow's tail. The latter suddenly jumped up as if it was stimulated, howling and pouncing towards the drunkard. Where are you looking? Where are you looking? Aren't you afraid of being blind? Facing the crazy Big Yellow, the drunkard fled in a sorry state. Only Qing was left in the field. She thought for a moment, raised her hand to form a sign, and then said, Now, how many people of our hidden fog house are training in this purgatory of darkness? Soon, an old voice sounded in the void. Miss, in the past 10,000 years, 237 quasi-emperors have left, and 154 quasi-emperors have entered. These years, 19 quasi-emperors have entered, that's good. Qing breathed a sigh of relief. As long as there were people in the purgatory of darkness, Lin Sun didn't have to worry about not being able to find out something related to the purgatory of darkness when he entered. As the primordial ancestral land of the hidden fog house, every once in a while, there would be extremely outstanding experts of the hidden fog house selected to enter the purgatory of darkness for training. As long as the experts came out of the purgatory of darkness alive, their strength would change by leaps and bounds. However, these experts all held a life-saving jade talisman in their hands, and could only practice in the first 3 levels of the purgatory of darkness. If they encountered a fatal danger, they would be transported out by the life-saving jade talisman. But Lin Sun was different. He didn't have a life-saving jade talisman. This was the order from the master of the Bronze Sparrow Tower, which meant that Lin Sun had to survive in the purgatory of darkness by his own strength. This itself seemed extremely cruel. For countless years, among the Bronze Sparrow Tower and the hidden fog house, only the master of the Bronze Sparrow Tower had entered the purgatory of darkness without a life-saving jade talisman. He was also the only one who reached the 9th level. Most of the other experts stopped in the first 3 levels, and there were some who entered the 3rd level, but the number was extremely small. For example, Goldie had reached the 7th level. Now, Lin Sun also entered the Purgatory of Darkness without a life-saving jade talisman. Could he prove his Tao in the Purgatory of Darkness? Qing Ying didn't know. The only thing she was worried about was whether Lin Sun would have an accident. The 1st level of the Purgatory of Darkness. The world was turbid, and the void was filled with a dark red light. The fierce and bloody aura was whistling between the heaven and the earth like a wanton gale. This place was extremely vast, just like a real purgatory world. Swish! As soon as Lin Sun's figure appeared, he immediately felt a majestic oppressive force, which made his body slightly stagnate, as if he was carrying a huge mountain on his back. If it was an ordinary person here, his body would have been crushed by the omnipresent pressure, and his body and soul would have been obliterated. This kind of power is enough to make it difficult for a Saint King to move an inch. Lin Sun took a deep breath, and as the power ran around his body, the majestic pressure was immediately offset and resolved. Rumble! Before Lin Sun could continue sizing up the 1st level of the Purgatory of Darkness, the ground shook, and a wave of violent rumbling came from afar. It seemed like a powerful army was charging over with a shocking impetus. At the same time, a strong, brutal, and ferocious aura surged over, and it seemed material as it covered the heavens and the earth. Moreover, a wave of extremely ear-piercing screams could be faintly heard. Chapter 2202. In Lin Sun's Sea of Consciousness, nearly 100 ferocious souls were rushing towards him from afar. These ferocious souls were shrouded in blood-red light, riding on clouds and mist. They looked like a demon or a monster. When they roared and galloped, they were like a horrible army from hell. The whole world was shaking, and the horrible bloody murderous spirit soared into the sky. Their aura is no different from that of an expert in the 3rd step of the quasi-emperor realm. Lin Sun made a judgment in an instant. He couldn't help but be surprised. This was only the 1st level of the Purgatory of Darkness, but the ferocious souls here were already so powerful. If that was the case, then how terrifying would the vastness of the 9th layer be? Newcomer? Hide if you don't want to be eliminated. Suddenly, an explosive shout that was like a thunderclap resounded, and it surged through the surroundings. Lin Sun noticed that there was a strong aura lurking in the nearby area. It was a thin man in a black robe. He was vigorous and fierce, and his eyes were frightening. Lin Sun was not surprised, but happy. At least he could further explore the Purgatory of Darkness. What are you waiting for? Hide! The black-robed man shouted. He had been practicing in the 1st level for decades, so he knew the situation here best. Usually, there would not be such a large group of ferocious souls. Once surrounded, the consequences would be unimaginable. It should be known that there were hundreds of ferocious souls with the combat strength of the 3rd step of the quasi-emperor realm. In the past decades, the black-robed man had only seen such a large group of ferocious souls 3 times, and no one dared to fight against them. Don't worry, my friend. I just came to the Purgatory of Darkness and want to test the ability of these ferocious souls, Lin Sun said casually. As he spoke, the group of ferocious souls appeared in his field of vision with a monstrous bloody aura. The black-robed man was stunned and almost laughed out of anger. He had never seen such a bold guy. Lin Sun had just arrived, but he was clamoring to fight against a group of ferocious souls. He was too ignorant. When the black-robed man was about to say something, Lin Sun had already made his move. He put his fingers into a sword and slashed in the void, and a burst of sword chi burst out. Swish! This sword seemed to be able to split heaven and earth, deducing infinite mystery. It crossed the sky and chopped down. Looking from a distance, it was like the Milky Way falling from the 9th heaven. Pu. Before the thousands of ferocious spirits with strength equivalent to 3rd-layer quasi-emperors could attack, They were enveloped by the sword chi and their bodies exploded like paper, turning into a rain of blood that rained down from the sky. It was completely annihilated. The black-clothed man was dumbfounded, his eyes staring blankly. A single sword strike annihilated an army of vile spirits? After a while, he looked at Lin Sun and said, "My friend, are you also from Misty House?" His voice carried a wisp of respect. All those that were able to enter the purgatory of darkness to temper themselves were extraordinary figures that were selected from the hidden mist house and copper sparrow pavilion. How could the black-clothed man not understand that this fellow that had just arrived was an extraordinary figure? Sort of. Lin Sun answered casually. He stepped forward and took the initiative to talk to the black-robed man. Soon, he found out that the black-robed man was called Bo Chuan and he was a first-layer quasi-emperor. He was the core successor of the hidden fog house, and he had been training in the first level of the purgatory of darkness for 39 years. 39 years ago, Bo Chuan was a perfect saint king. Now, he was already at the first stage of the quasi-emperor realm. This could be said to be shocking. After all, not everyone could become a quasi-emperor as they wished. When Lin Sun learned from Bo Chuan that the experts who came to the purgatory of darkness would wear a life-saving jade talisman, his face darkened. He thought of the dog that kicked him into the whirlpool and gnashed his teeth with hatred. Naturally, he blamed this on Big Yellow. And when Bo Chuan learned that the purpose of Lin Sun's trip was to kill his way to the 9th level, he was stunned. The 9th level. Since ancient times, only the Master of Bronze Sparrow Pavilion had reached the 9th level of the Purgatory of Darkness. It was there that the Master of Bronze Sparrow Pavilion became an emperor. Bo Chuan took a deep breath and asked, "Brother Lin, when you came here, no one told you how dangerous the Purgatory of Darkness is?" Lin Sun shook his head. Bo Chuan revealed a knowing look and said, "Brother Lin, it's not that I want to discourage you, but you still don't understand the Purgatory of Darkness." As he spoke, he told Lin Sun some of the information he knew. In other words, even if you have a life-saving jade talisman, you can only use it in the first 3 levels? Lin Sun finally understood. Bo Chuan said, "Yes, from the 4th level down, the evil spirits distributed are extremely powerful. An expert like you, who is a 3rd-layer quasi-emperor, would not dare to enter easily. In the last 10,000 years, only a few dozen ruthless people have ventured below the 4th level. As for the 9th level, it is said that even emperors will meet with misfortune if they enter. It is definitely a place of great danger." Lin Sun suddenly understood. "I see." After that, he asked a few more key questions, and Bo Chuan answered all of them. In the Purgatory of Darkness, the spiritual chi was exhausted and the law of great ways did not exist. To restore one's physical strength, one had to carry a large number of cultivation resources, and the other had to rely on hunting evil spirits to collect great way source crystals. According to Bo Chuan, those evil spirits were formed from the remnant souls, wills, and blood chi of the terrifying people who died here in primitive times. And the Great Way source crystals were the essence of the Great Ways condensed from the cultivation of those terrifying people who died here. When they were alive, emperors possessed supreme cultivation and controlled terrifying Tao, but after they died, the power of the Great Ways they controlled would dissipate along with them. However, it was different in the Purgatory of Darkness. All those terrifying figures that were buried here had transformed into a part of this expanse of the heavens and the earth after they perished, and as time passed, they gradually condensed into grand Tao quintessence crystals. The quality of the Great Way source crystals also differed. The lower one went in the Purgatory of Darkness, the more astonishing the quality of the Great Way source crystals. Some rare Great Way source crystals even had fragments of the Law of Emperor sealed inside, and could be said to be rare treasures in the outside world. However, Bo Chuan had not seen such a Great Way source crystal before, because he had been training in the 1st level all these years, and had no chance to come into contact with such treasures. After understanding this, Lin Sun felt a lot more at ease. When he intended to make a move, Bo Chuan said abruptly, "Brother Lin, I'm about to break through to the peak of the second level of the Quasi-Emperor realm, and I intend to head to the second level to temper myself. You've just arrived here, yet your strength is extremely extraordinary, and it far surpasses mine. Why don't we make a move together?" Lin Sun thought for a moment, and then nodded in agreement. "However, my objective is to kill my way into the 9th level, so I'm afraid it's impossible for me to always be by your side." Bo Chuan was astounded. He'd already told Lin Sun about the dangers of the purgatory of darkness, yet Lin Sun still seemed to hold an unrealistic thought. Is it because the skilled are bold, or is it because the ignorant are fearless? Bo Chuan didn't ridicule or attack Lin Sun, and he just said, "Brother Lin, I believe that once you truly witness how terrifying the purgatory of darkness is, you'll surely change your mind." Obviously, he didn't believe Lin Sun at all. Lin Sun didn't explain anything. In next to no time, the two of them flashed towards the distance. The purgatory of darkness was an extremely mysterious and dangerous place, and it was a place where the gods were buried after the first calamity of oblivion came to an end. Simply speaking, it was like a world of tombs. However, there were no tombs here, and there were only countless ferocious spirits. The purgatory of darkness was divided into 18 levels. Every level had a blood-colored passageway that was shaped like a vortex, and it led to the next level. According to Bo Chuan, there was no restriction on entering the next level from the previous level, and it could be entered at any time. But if one wanted to return to the previous level from the next level, then there were only two ways. One was to wait for an opportunity, and an opportunity to freely enter and exit the blood-colored passageway would appear every once in a while. The second was to rely on one's own strength to kill one's way out forcefully, and this method was the most difficult. Lin Sun committed all of this to memory, yet he didn't care too much about it. With Bo Chuan leading the way, it allowed Lin Sun to save a great deal of time in finding the way. As the saying goes, an old horse knows the way. All along the way, the two of them encountered some ferocious spirits. All of them had ferocious and savage auras, and their entire bodies were suffused with blood-colored fluctuations. They moved out in groups of 2 or 3, or moved out in groups of 3 or 5. These naturally weren't obstructions to Lin Sun, and he casually wiped them out as easily as pinching a fly to death. Bo Chuan noticed all of this, and he had no choice but to admit in his heart that this fellow that had just arrived here really did possess extremely shocking ability. If it was him who fought these ferocious spirits, then he might not necessarily be able to do it so easily. On the other hand, Lin Sun had collected some great Tao origin crystals all along the way. These treasures came in various shapes, large and small, and all of them were translucent and crystalline. They were suffused with pure and thick energy of the Grand Tao, and a thumb-sized one was comparable to the energy possessed by 10,000 Tao crystals. It was extremely shocking. Lin Sun tried to refine and absorb one, and he instantly noticed that great Tao origin crystals weren't just capable of replenishing the energy he consumed, they were greatly beneficial to the energy of the Grand Tao he possessed as well. He couldn't help but feel slight anticipation because of this. Exactly what sort of shocking profundities would be contained within those great Tao origin crystals that contain Emperor Tao Law's fragment? Swoosh! After the time for an incense stick to burn, a strand of dazzling divine radiance suddenly shot into the sky and tore through the distant space, and it seemed to be extremely dazzling in this gray and hazy world. Another treasure has appeared. Bo Chuan was already shouting loudly with excitement. "Brother Lin, our luck isn't bad, and we've encountered a fortune. Come, quickly go take it. Otherwise, it would truly be a pity if it was seized by others." Swoosh! As he spoke, he'd already teleported and charged over with all his might. A treasure? Lin Sun's black eyes were deep. He'd noticed as well that the strand of dazzling divine radiance was rather extraordinary, and he was faintly able to discern clearly that it was a palm-sized azure cauldron. As it flew, it flowed with a gorgeous rain of the grand Tao that was resplendent and multicolored, and it was a shocking scene. As he pondered, Lin Sun charged over as well. Withdraw. Bo Chuan withdrew a golden and dazzling whip and swung it out from afar, and it instantly coiled around the azure cauldron. But before Bo Chuan could feel happy, the azure cauldron emitted a shocking fluctuation, and then it droned as it easily struggled free from the golden whip before fleeing towards the extreme distance. It seemed to be extremely intelligent. Chapter 2203. The green cauldron glowed brilliantly. Although it was only the size of a palm, it was full of spirituality. With a light flash, it was about to escape. Bo Chuan was anxious. This was definitely a rare treasure. If he missed it, he might not be able to see it again. In the 39 years of training on the first level, Bo Chuan had only seen the birth of a treasure 4 times. Unfortunately, he had only seen it and had no chance to fight for it. But now it was different. As he was about to make a move, he saw a rope emitting dazzling golden light sweep across the sky. It twirled lightly in the void and entangled the green cauldron. They were like prey that had been tied up, unable to move at all. Whoosh! The next moment, the green cauldron fell into Lin Sun's palm along with the golden rope. The golden rope was the golden rope of treasure binding, a trophy Lin Sun had obtained from Huangfu Shaonong in the ancient immortal forbidden area. It was the most precious treasure of the Qiankuan Taoist court. Like the legendary copper coin of Treasurefall, it was said to be able to bind many emperor treasures in the world. Back then, the golden rope of treasure binding had even bound the lifeless seal for a moment. Lin Sun had to use the Endless Way pagoda to suppress it. Lin Sun put away the golden rope of treasure binding and looked at the green cauldron. It was the size of a palm and was green like glass. There was a layer of natural Taoist patterns on the cauldron. Unfortunately, the cauldron was missing a leg and there was a crack at the mouth, greatly destroying the perfect charm it should have had. What a treasure! Bo Chuan walked over, his eyes glued to the green cauldron. His face was full of uncontrollable envy. In an instant the treasure was taken. No matter how envious he was, he didn't dare to compete with Lin Sun for it. Here you go. Lin Sun threw the small green cauldron to Bo Chuan. The latter caught it in a hurry and was stunned. You gave it to me? His face was full of disbelief. I don't need it, Lin Sun said casually. The small green cauldron was indeed magical. Although it was incomplete, it was not comparable to ordinary emperor treasures. However, for Lin Sun, even if he accepted the cauldron, it would soon become food for Wu Kei and the Broken Blade spirit. Since that was the case, he might as well give it to Bo Chuan to thank him for his guidance. Bo Chuan's entire body began to tremble. He was too excited. He couldn't help but say, Brother Lin, the treasures left behind in this hidden purgatory of darkness aren't ordinary. Almost all of them were left behind during the primordial era. If it's an ordinary treasure, then it would have lost all its intelligence a long time ago and vanished from the world after suffering the corrosion of countless years. On the other hand, treasures that are able to be preserved until now and still possess intelligence aren't ordinary imperial artifacts. You really want to give it to me? He was still in disbelief. Lin Sun said with a smile, Just take it. Don't talk nonsense. Only then was Bo Chuan certain that all of this was real. However, right when he was about to put the treasure away, an icy cold voice suddenly resounded from afar. Bo Chuan, I've been eyeing that treasure for a long time. However, I still have to thank you for subduing it. Now hand it over. In the distance, several figures turned into divine rainbows and came from the void. There were 3 men and 2 women. All of them had strong auras and extremely fierce momentum. Only those who had been fighting all year round could have such momentum. The one who spoke was a man in a purple robe. He was standing on a blood-red saber. His figure was strong and his eyes were full of indifference. As soon as they arrived, they all fixed their eyes on the green cauldron in Bo Chuan's hand. They couldn't help showing a trace of eagerness. Lu Xiao, what do you mean by the treasure you've set your eyes on is yours? Bo Chuan's face was gloomy. Although he and Lu Xiao all came from Bronze Sparrow Tower, the relationship between them wasn't very good. Especially in this hidden purgatory of darkness, there was still competition between them. Things like fighting for treasures like this often happened. As long as no one killed anyone, Bronze Sparrow Tower wouldn't care about these trivial matters. Lu Xiao's expression was indifferent as he said, Bo Chuan, I know that you're unwilling. How about this, I won't make you work for nothing. Take these 10 great Tao origin crystals as a reward for helping me subdue the treasure. As he spoke, he flicked his finger and a row of dazzling great Tao origin crystals shot out. There were exactly 10 of them, and they rolled on the ground in front of Bo Chuan. You want to exchange 10 great Tao origin crystals for a miraculous treasure? Bo Chuan's face was livid and he was seething with anger. What if I don't agree? Lu Xiao laughed. The 2 men and 1 woman beside him also laughed. Their smiles were filled with playfulness, pity, and disdain. They were all quasi-emperors who were used to seeing the dangers of the world. Who wouldn't know what would happen next? Bo Chuan's current behavior was nothing more than unwillingness. Lin Sun also saw this. He was very clear that this kind of thing was far too common. On the entire ancient path of the starry sky, one could almost see such cases of greed and fighting over treasures. But the point was that this green cauldron was given to Bo Chuan after he had subdued it. At this time, Bo Chuan also looked at Lin Sun with a helpless, annoyed, and unwilling look. What? Are you going to fight with your friend to see if you can keep this treasure? A woman with an enchanting figure, snow-white skin, and fiery red lips spoke, her watery eyes charming and alluring. Another thin man said, Friend, you look very unfamiliar. Have you just arrived? I advise you to stay away from Bo Chuan. This guy offended someone he shouldn't have offended a few years ago. Now in this purgatory of darkness, no one dares to act with him. You, Bo Chuan's eyes flashed with anger, blue veins bulging on his forehead. Obviously, the thin man's words had poked the scar in his heart. The thin man said sarcastically, What, did I say something wrong? 9 years ago, which fool offended senior brother Meng Xingzi for a woman? Enough. Bo Chuan hissed, his eyes turning red. But the thin man laughed and said to himself, Look, you're flustered and exasperated. He looked at Lin Sun and said, Friend, I've made it very clear. You're new here and know nothing. I advise you to leave as soon as possible. Don't hang out with Bo Chuan. Otherwise, if you're seen by senior brother Meng Xingzi, you'll be in big trouble. Lin Sun didn't know who Meng Xingzi was, and he didn't care who Meng Xingzi was. At this time, he didn't even know who these robbers were. But it didn't matter. For Lin Sun, he didn't care who these robbers were. Besides, he had lost his patience at this moment. This treasure was subdued by me, and I promised to act with Bo Chuan. Now I just want to ask you one question. Are you sure you want to block here? Lin Sun looked indifferent and his tone was very casual. But as soon as this sentence came out, Lu Xiao, the thin man, and others were all stunned. It seemed that they didn't expect that this newcomer would be so tough. Lu Xiao raised his eyebrows and said with a cold and unhappy look, Friend, you, before he finished his words. An unparalleled and terrible power spread from Lin Sun, oppressing Lu Xiao like an avalanche. The latter breathed hard, and with a bang, he was knocked out and fell on the ground dozens of feet away, coughing up blood. There was a dead silence, and everyone looked shocked. Lin Sun said indifferently, I just asked you whether you want to block the way, and I don't intend to listen to your nonsense. Also, you don't deserve to be my friend. Bo Chuan, let's go. As he said, he lifted his foot and walked forward. Do you know what you are doing? The thin man was fierce in appearance, and he had already noticed that something was wrong. Bang! The next moment, he was also shaken away like a kite with a broken string, with blood spurting from his mouth and nose. He had no strength to struggle and resist. The enchanting woman and the other person were horrified, as if falling into an ice cave. They realized that they had kicked an iron plate this time, and their faces changed. Lu Xiao and the Thin Man were both at the second level of the quasi-emperor realm, and they already had the foundation and power to enter the second level. But at this time, they looked so weak that they couldn't even resist the opponent's pressure. This was terrible. For a moment, they looked at Lin Sun with fear and horror in their eyes. They couldn't imagine how powerful he was. Lin Sun didn't look at all this and walked away with Bo Chuan. Someone like Lu Xiao could perhaps already be considered a top figure amongst his peers. He even possessed a foundation that was sufficient for any great faction to think highly of him. But in Lin Sun's eyes, if it were in the outside world, he would have killed such people many times. Clang! With a sharp sound of a saber, a ray of dazzling saber chi swept up like a thunderbolt and chopped towards Lin Sun from behind. The saber chi was dense and dazzling. Lin Sun didn't look back. An abyss-like power emerged from his body and easily crushed the saber chi. The attacker was Lu Xiao. When he saw this scene, his face changed completely, and he did not hesitate to escape to the far distance. Chi. What was even faster than him was a streak of dazzling and resplendent sword chi. It flashed through the air and pierced a bloody hole in his chest, causing him to cry out in pain. At this moment, he almost suspected that he was dead. The sword chi was completely invincible, so sharp that it made him desperate. "If you want to die, you can continue," Lin Sun said indifferently in the distance. Lu Xiao trembled all over, and his expression was uncertain. The others were horrified to the extreme as well, and they went silent like cicadas in winter. Until Lin Sun's figure disappeared from their sight, they didn't dare to move again, for they were really frightened by the scene just now. "Let's go." After a long time, Lu Xiao got up and said with a livid face. "Where to?" asked the enchanting woman. "To find senior brother Meng Xingzi." Lu Xiao gnashed his teeth, and his eyes were full of resentment. At the same time, Bo Chuan, who followed Lin Sun, opened his mouth and was about to say something, but was interrupted by Lin Sun. "I'm not helping you. It's their fault for blocking the way." Bo Chuan's expression was complicated, but he still said, "Brother Lin, what they said before is right. If you act with me, you will be regarded as an enemy. Let's go separately. I, Bo Chuan, will try my best to repay the kindness of helping me and giving me treasures this time." Saying this, he turned around and was about to leave. Chapter 2204. Lin Sun sighed softly and pressed Bo Chuan's shoulder, saying, "If you leave, who will lead the way for me?" Bo Chuan said anxiously, "Brother Lin, you just came to the purgatory of darkness, so you don't know that Meng Xingzi has already ordered that anyone who dares to act with me will be his enemy. If I act with you, I will be harming you." As he spoke, he told Lin Sun the origin of Meng Xingzi. But who would have thought that after listening, Lin Sun didn't take it seriously and didn't even bother to talk about this topic, saying, "Are you going or not?" Bo Chuan was stunned. After a long while, he gritted his teeth and said, "Go." Lin Sun laughed. "That's right." A quarter of an hour later, two figures appeared in front of a bloody vortex tunnel, which was the way to the second floor. Whoosh whoosh. Soon, the two figures disappeared in it. The second floor of the purgatory of darkness. The world here was still dark, scarlet, and oppressive. The world was filled with a brutal and destructive atmosphere, which made it difficult to breathe. When he appeared in this world, Bo Chuan staggered and almost fell down. The reason was that the oppressive force in the second floor was more and more terrible. Walking in it was like carrying a mountain, and you would be oppressed from all directions. Glancing at Bo Chuan, Lin Sun had probably judged that Bo Chuan could only practice in the second floor at most. If he went any further, he would be in danger. Chi. A bloody shadow as thick as a thumb sprang out of the void, like a bolt of lightning, and silently stabbed at the back of Lin Sun's head. Lin Sun didn't look back, but directly caught the bloody figure with a casual grasp. This was a fierce soul, full of blood and chi, with twisted and ferocious facial features, and a pair of mung bean-like eyes full of violence and scarlet. Its power was no less than that of Ju Shi in the first level of Quasi-Emperor. But now it was imprisoned by Lin Sun like an earthworm, without any room to struggle. Its fangs were densely covered with a sharp hiss. The resentment is not small. Lin Sun looked at it for a while, and then he used his palm and fingers to incinerate the evil soul. There was an almond-sized source crystal in his palm, which was obviously better than the source crystal obtained on the first floor. Buchuan felt dizzy watching Lin Sun kill such a vile soul so easily. If it were him, he would have to experience a fierce battle. Let's go and check out the mysteries of this floor. Lin Sun led the way. It was the first time for Buchuan to enter the second floor, so it was meaningless to count on him to lead the way. In the time it took for an incense stick to burn. Along the way, Lin Sun and the others encountered 19 attacks. The strongest of the ferocious spirits that appeared were as strong as a peak second-layer Quasi-Emperor, while the weakest was as strong as a third-layer Quasi-Emperor. To Buchuan, the second level was simply too dangerous. If it wasn't for Lin Sun leading the way, he would have long since fled who knows how many times. But it was not enough for Lin Sun. He was like a hot knife through butter. Buchuan was so shocked along the way that he was a little numb to the killing stance. He was unable to imagine when such a heaven-defying and ruthless person had appeared in the Copper Sparrow Tower. One day later. I'm going to go to the third floor. Lin Sun made up his mind. In this day, he had already figured out the situation of the second floor of the Purgatory of Darkness. He only had one feeling: boredom. His only gain was that he had collected hundreds of precious Great Way Source crystals of different sizes from the vile souls he had killed along the way. As for relic treasures like the Green Cauldron, he had not seen a single one. Clearly, as Buchuan had said, the appearance of relic treasures also depended on luck. It was a fortuitous encounter that could not be sought. Brother Lin, do you really plan to go to the 9th floor? Buchuan could not help but ask. At first, he did not believe Lin Sun's words at all, thinking that Lin Sun was a newcomer and did not understand the horrors of the Purgatory of Darkness. But now, after following Lin Sun for so long, he had long recognized the terror of Lin Sun's combat strength. Instead, he was somewhat skeptical. Lin Sun grunted and gave a portion of the Great Way Source crystals he had collected these days to Buchuan. Then, he planned to take his leave. Buchuan was very reluctant to part with Lin Sun, but he knew that if he kept following Lin Sun, there would be no chance for Lin Sun to fight at all, and it was bound to be impossible for him to temper his cultivation. Taking a deep breath, Buchuan cupped his hands and said, "Brother Lin, take care. I'm looking forward to you being able to reproduce the demeanor of the Copper Sparrow Tower Master and kill your way to the 9th floor." Lin Sun smiled and was just about to say something when he suddenly frowned, and his black eyes looked into the distance like lightning. Whoosh! The space in the distance roiled as numerous figures appeared. The one in the lead was an extraordinarily handsome young man who wore crimson armor, had long hair that fluttered in the wind, and a broadsword hung from his waist. Beside this young man was a group of men and women, including Lu Xiao, the enchanting woman, and the others. When he saw the handsome young man in the lead, Buchuan's expression changed instantly, and he said without hesitation, "Brother Lin, leave quickly." His voice revealed anxiety, panic, and uneasiness. Lin Sun patted Buchuan on the shoulder and said, "I'll definitely leave, but before I leave, there's no harm in helping you solve some problems." Buchuan was stunned. At the same time, Lu Xiao in the distance pointed to Lin Sun and said in a cold voice, "Senior brother Mengxingzi, it's that guy who disobeyed your order and insisted on going against us." The handsome young man in red armor nodded, stared at Lin Sun expressionlessly, and said, "What else do you want to explain?" There was a sense of superiority in his voice. He was Meng Xingzi. Buchuan had explained to Lin Sun before that this man entered the purgatory of darkness 193 years ago and was regarded as one of the 7 peerless in the quasi-emperor realm of the Copper Sparrow Tower. With fierce combat power and strong foundation, he was like a leading figure among his peers. At a glance, Lin Sun found that the man's breath was steady and his power was indeed extraordinary. He could be regarded as a peerless figure among the top quasi-emperors. But that was all. A long time ago, Lin Sun had looked down on his peers. Even ordinary emperors could not make him feel any fear. Under such circumstances, how could he take Meng Xingzi seriously? Senior brother Meng, brother Lin is a newcomer and doesn't know anything. This matter has nothing to do with him. If you want to punish him, I'll bear it alone. Buchuan gritted his teeth and stepped forward bravely. Obviously, he was really worried that he would implicate Lin Sun and intended to shoulder all the responsibilities. This made Lin Sun feel helpless and emotional. This guy was very kind-hearted, but his eyesight was a little poor. You think it has nothing to do with you? Lu Zhao's face was full of hatred. Let me tell you, Buchuan, today not only that guy, but also you can't escape. Buchuan, if you too know what's good for you, kneel down quickly. The enchanting woman shouted. They were all fearless, as if they could be lawless and fearless as long as Meng Xingzi was here. Buchuan's eyes were bloodshot and red. He clenched his fists and said in a hoarse voice, "If you have the guts, kill me today. Otherwise, I will pay you back tenfold in the future." His voice was powerful and resonant, filled with incomparable determination. The atmosphere in the field was silent for a moment. No one dared to kill a fellow disciple in the purgatory of darkness. This was an iron law. Even if Lu Xiao and others dared to trample and torture Buchuan, they did not dare to kill him. But it was obvious that Buchuan hated them completely. If they didn't kill him this time, he would definitely retaliate against them in the future. Retaliate? Tenfold in the future? Buchuan, how dare you? Meng Xingzi's voice was cold, and his eyes were surging with terrible coldness. I'll give you a chance. Kneel down and apologize to me now, and I can let bygones be bygones. I don't even mind letting you two go this time. Otherwise, you should know how serious the consequences of offending me are. As he said this, Buchuan's face flushed red with anger. At this moment, Lin Sun suddenly took a step forward and said, Buchuan, I don't care what kind of grievances you have with these people, and I don't care who is right and who is wrong. But since it happened and I'm involved in it, I can't just stand by. Lu Xiao and others' faces changed slightly. Even if they were full of confidence, they still couldn't help but feel terrified and incomparable fear in front of Lin Sun. Meng Xingzi frowned and said, It seems that you are not convinced? Or should I say, this is the explanation you are giving me? His voice was cold. Lin Sun ignored him and said to Buchuan, Besides, your eyesight is really poor. You have to see clearly who is standing and who is kneeling. As soon as he finished speaking, he strode forward in the void. You're courting death. Meng Xingzi's eyes flashed with killing intent, and he suddenly waved his palm. Boom! The palm force was like a knife, emitting dazzling fire law and tearing the sky. But this blow failed. Lin Sun's figure flashed and appeared in front of Lu Xiao. The latter was so scared that he was stiff all over. Before he could react, Lin Sun's palm pressed on his shoulder. Kneel down. When the indifferent voice sounded, Lu Xiao's body, like a piece of wood, fell from the air and knelt on the ground. The earth trembled and the smoke and dust dispersed. The nearby enchanting woman and the thin man all changed their faces and dodged without hesitation. At the same time, they screamed and asked Meng Xingzi for help. In fact, Meng Xingzi had already rushed to Lin Sun with a huge broadsword in his hand. But Lin Sun didn't even look at him. His figure flashed, and Meng Xingzi's attack failed again. Kneel down. At the same time, Lin Sun's indifferent voice sounded. Without his movement, the enchanting woman, the thin man and others knelt down like dumplings in a pot. Even those strong practitioners who came with Meng Xingzi were not spared. They were suppressed by the terrible pressure and knelt down one by one. They were imprisoned on the ground and couldn't move. When Meng Xingzi was about to attack for the third time, he looked around and found that there was no one standing around except him. All this happened almost in an instant. It was incredibly fast. Meng Xingzi's face changed completely, and an uncontrollable chill surged in his heart. How could this guy be so powerful? Who on earth was he? Goldfish would write an analysis post on Master of the Heart on the public account tomorrow. Chapter 2205. Buchuan's eyes widened and he forgot to breathe. There was no earth-shattering battle, no deafening sound of fighting, and no dazzling Taoist light sweeping across, but as Lin Sun went out, strong people knelt down one after another, seeming to be so casual and composed. But Buchuan knew that this was a kind of absolutely crushing attitude, a kind of unparalleled style of invincibility. Is it true that my eyesight is too poor? Until now, I haven't found that Brother Lin beside me is actually a nature-defying existence that can't be measured by common sense? Buchuan was in a trance. He suddenly felt that the anger, anxiety, and worry he had before seemed very unnecessary. There was a dead silence in the field. Meng Xingzi, who was about to attack for the third time, stopped there with a gloomy look. He stared at Lin Sun in front of him, as if he knew Lin Sun again. Seeing this scene, Buchuan felt an indescribable sense of absurdity in his heart. Was this one of the 7 great peaks that he feared and feared? Was this Meng Xingzi, who could make all the peers in Bronze Sparrow Tower bow their heads with a single order? Right now, he seemed to be frightened as well. Who on earth are you? Why haven't I heard of such a figure in Bronze Sparrow Tower before? Meng Xingzi said in a low voice. His previous aloof posture had disappeared, and his face was full of solemnity and surprise. Lin Sun ignored him and walked forward in the air. His tall figure was indifferent and extraordinary, with an unparalleled style. Kneel down. His voice sounded like a thunder, hitting Meng Xingzi's heart. He almost couldn't believe that Lin Sun dared to ask him to kneel down. An indescribable feeling of shame, anger, and humiliation stimulated Meng Xingzi's face to look ferocious. He roared and attacked with all his strength. Get lost. The horrible law of fire spread from Meng Xingzi like a volcanic eruption. He took out half of a gray broken spear and swept it out. Boom! Chaotic chi was released from the spear like a landslide and a tsunami. The unparalleled murderous spirit disturbed the world. For a time, there was a terrible scene of the sky falling, the earth cracking, the sun and the moon breaking. This severely damaged spear was clearly not an ordinary spear. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed with a strange light. What a familiar power! The remaining half of the spear seemed to be. Boom! When the spear arrived, its unparalleled sharpness easily tore apart Lin's attack. The bone-piercing killing intent forced Lin to use his real strength to resolve it. Kill. Meng Xingzi's imposing aura was like a madman after he succeeded with a single strike. The damaged half of the spear carried surging chaotic chi, and when it slashed down, it seemed as if it could pierce through the sky and crush the starry sky, causing its impetus to be extremely shocking. Lin Sun dodged, with a touch of joy in his black eyes. He was finally sure that the remaining half of the spear should also be a Kunlun Emperor weapon. Why are you hiding? Aren't you very strong? Meng Xingzi shouted loudly in high spirits as he brandished his spear, and he was like a god that fought the heavens and the earth. Boom! The spear broke through the air and came to Lin Sun in a flash, with unparalleled sharpness. But at this moment, suddenly, a piece of black copper appeared in Lin Sun's palm and blocked the spear. Meng Xingzi's face suddenly changed. The spear in his hand seemed to be firmly stuck by a magnet. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't pull it back for a while. Lin Sun smiled slightly and shook his wrist. The broken half of the spear flew out of Meng Xingzi's hand and fell into Lin Sun's palm together with the black copper. No! Give me back my treasure! Give me back my treasure! Meng Xingzi turned pale with fright and his eyes turned red. He rushed forward violently as if he was desperate. Obviously, this half of the spear was also extremely important to him. Unfortunately, he, who had lost this half of the spear, was no longer a threat to Lin Sun. Lin Sun waved his sleeve. Boom! Meng Xingzi was smashed down from the air and knelt on the ground. His body was imprisoned by an unparalleled force, and he couldn't stand up at all. He raised his head, stared at Lin Sun who was standing in the air with his eyes wide open, and roared, "Give me back my treasure! Give it back to me!" Lin Sun ignored him. The black copper was the fragment left by the Kunlun source furnace of treasure refining, which contained the original aura of the source furnace. Because of this, the half of the spear could be easily subdued. At this time, looking at the broken spear, Lin Sun found that although it was seriously damaged, it still exuded a chilling murderous spirit. It was like a peerless murderous weapon, which could pierce the sky and penetrate the void of eternity. Just looking at it, Lin Sun's eyes hurt and his mind trembled. A name came to Lin Sun's mind involuntarily: the Great Wei Empyrean Spear, one of the 9 emperor weapons of Kunlun. Where did you get this treasure? Lin Sun looked at Meng Xingzi, and he couldn't help feeling surprised. He didn't expect that he would encounter another emperor weapon of Kunlun in this purgatory of darkness. Meng Xingzi shouted like a madman, "This treasure belongs to senior brother Nye Yunji. If he knows that you robbed this treasure, he will kill you without hesitation. Come on, give it back to me, give it back to me!" Nye Yunji. In the distance, Bochuan's face changed greatly, and he said quickly, "Brother Lin, Nye Yunji is the head of the 7 great masters of the Bronze Sparrow Tower. He came to this purgatory of darkness 3,000 years ago to practice. It is said that he has already killed his way to the 6th floor. If there is no accident, I am afraid that he has already become an emperor. Now you understand that if you dare to take this treasure for yourself, you will definitely die." Meng Xingzi shouted, "Nye Yunji doesn't care about the rules, and he doesn't care about the rules when he kills people." Lin Sun put away the half of the spear calmly, and then said, "From now on, this treasure is mine. Whether you or Nye Yunji, if you want to take it back, just come to me." Meng Xingzi lost his wits as if he was struck by lightning. Lin Sun said to himself, "Also, from today on, in this purgatory of darkness, anyone who dares to bully Bochuan is my enemy, and there is only one end for those who are my enemy: death." The word "death" resounded in the field like a thunder, making Meng Xingzi, Lu Xiao, and others tremble in their hearts and change their expressions. This was an undisguised threat. But for Bochuan, Lin Sun's words were like an unexpected warm current, which suddenly surged all over his body. He was caught unprepared and had the impulse to cry. In the past 39 years, since he offended Meng Xingzi, he struggled to survive on the 1st floor alone. No one dared to contact him, and everyone who saw him rejected and isolated him as if he was a snake or a scorpion. He had known Lin Sun for less than 2 days, but Lin Sun protected him all the way, regarded him as a friend, and even offended Meng Xingzi and others. How could Bochuan not be moved by this? At this point, Lin Sun had planned to leave and go to the next floor. But at this moment, Meng Xingzi begged in a sad voice, "Brother Lin, this treasure is extremely important. If I lose it, it is very likely to kill some people of my sect. Please be merciful." Meng Xingzi looked gloomy. "You don't know that a big disaster has happened on the 4th floor of the purgatory of darkness." He told the whole story one by one. It turned out that a fierce soul overlord with wisdom and consciousness appeared on the 4th floor of the purgatory of darkness and suppressed the 4 overmatches of the Bronze Sparrow Tower. The fierce soul overlord bluntly said that only by handing over the broken spear could he save the 4 overmatches. So, this treasure has nothing to do with Nye Yunji at all, and it belongs to you? Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and said. Meng Xingzi's expression was bitter. That's right. I'm using Nye Yunji's name to intimidate you and make you back off. Moreover, if this treasure really belongs to Nye Yunji, why would he lend it to me? Lin Sun thought for a while and asked, why does the fierce soul overlord know about this spear? Because this treasure was originally a relic from the 4th floor of the Purgatory of Darkness. When this treasure appeared, not only my companions and I, but also the fierce soul overlord targeted it. At this time, Meng Xingzi no longer concealed and said, although I was lucky to get this treasure in the end, my companions were suppressed by the fierce soul overlord. I alone am no match for the overlord of the vile spirits. The reason why I've returned from the 4th floor is to find some helpers. If there's really no other way, I can only hand over this treasure in exchange for the lives of my companions. Speaking of this, Meng Xingzi begged, Brother Lin, you should understand now that if I lose this treasure, my companions will all die. Lin Sun was a little surprised that Meng Xingzi was so loyal. At this time, Buchuan suddenly transmitted his voice to Lin. Brother Lin, don't listen to his nonsense. This guy is not as righteous as he said. There must be a trap. Lin Sun narrowed his black eyes slightly and thought for a while. Then, he looked at Meng Xingzi and said, You come with me. Meng Xingzi was stunned. Brother Lin, what do you mean? Don't you want to save people? I can help you, Lin Sun said casually. Meng Xingzi's face changed slightly. Brother Lin, the fierce soul overlord is extremely powerful. He controls all the fierce souls in the 4th floor. In that world, he is like a dominator. Before he finished, he was interrupted by Lin Sun. Are you going or not? Meng Xingzi's expression changed. He gritted his teeth and said, Go! Lin Sun looked at Buchuan and said with a smile, Buchuan, have a good experience. See you later. As he said, he waved his sleeve and rolled up Meng Xingzi, who was imprisoned on the ground, and moved away. Brother Lin, take care of yourself, Buchuan murmured in his heart. On the ground in the distance, Lu Xiao and others had already climbed up from the ground, and they were all listless like frosted eggplants. They looked at Buchuan with resentment and undisguised coldness in their eyes, but no one dared to go forward to deal with Buchuan. Lin Sun's previous words were like an invisible deterrent. As long as Lin Sun was alive, they dared not act rashly. Swish. Chapter 2206. The 3rd level of the Purgatory of Darkness. In the murky and dark bloody world, Lin Sun moved and flew, not hiding his aura at all. He was like a bright rainbow. Compared with the 2nd level, the oppressive force in the 3rd level was much stronger, and the brutal and bloody aura raged like a hurricane. Just this kind of dangerous and harsh environment was enough to make a 2nd-stage quasi-emperor unable to move an inch. Boom! Before long, a group of ferocious souls rushed out with boiling blood, stirring up the universe, and rushed to kill Lin Sun. Every single fierce spirit possessed the strength of a peak 2nd-stage realm and above, and their auras were ferocious. If it was someone like Bo Chuan who came here, he would definitely be in danger. But for Lin Sun, it was still not enough. His figure did not stop, whistling forward, and wherever he passed, the ferocious souls in front of him exploded and shattered. Meng Xingzi, who was held in Lin Sun's hand like a chicken, was dumbfounded. Although he now had the combat strength of the 3rd-stage quasi-emperor, he did not dare to be so rampant in the 3rd level. If he was entangled by those ferocious souls, it would take a lot of effort to kill them. But compared with Lin Sun, it was a world of difference. In just a quarter of an hour, Lin Sun had come to the Whirlpool Passage to the 4th level. Brother Lin, after entering the 4th level, the life-saving Jade Talisman will lose its effect. Once you encounter an accident, you will never come out, Meng Xingzi couldn't help saying. Lin Sun said, You don't seem to want me to help? Meng Xingzi shook his head quickly. I'm just worried that Brother Lin is new here and doesn't know the situation. If there is any danger, it will be disadvantageous to Brother Lin." Lin soon glanced at him, ignored him, and rushed straight into the whirlpool passage. The heavens and the earth were dark and gloomy, and unlike the first 3 levels, the sky of the 4th level was covered in terrifying blood-colored lightning that surged like thunderclouds. Dazzling bolts of lightning would pour down from the sky from time to time, and they were suffused with a terrifying aura of destruction. As soon as he arrived, Lin soon noticed that the thunder and lightning in the sky were transformed by a brutal and fierce evil spirit. This was amazing. The surroundings were boundless, the sky was muddy, and a violent aura that oppressed one's heart raged. Merely standing here was like standing in a bloody and cruel purgatory. A scarlet-red river of blood flowed mightily in the distance. The river water was dark red and muddy, and the roiling waves revealed numerous scenes of death. The sound of ghosts wailing and gods howling faintly resounded in the world, and it caused one to shudder with fear. Few after arriving here, Lin soon had to run his cultivation to offset the oppressive evil chi from all directions. He asked, "Where is the vile soul overlord you mentioned?" "Brother Lin, this place is really too dangerous. Do you know that more than half of the experts that came here in the last 10,000 years have suffered misfortune?" Meng Xingzi's expression was filled with anxiety. An ordinary ferocious spirit is enough to kill a 3rd-layer quasi-emperor, and the overlord of the ferocious spirit is almost comparable to a true martial emperor. As he spoke, he begged, "Brother Lin, we'd better leave quickly. Otherwise, once we are discovered by the overlord of the ferocious spirit, there is absolutely no chance for us to escape alive." Lin Sun said expressionlessly, "Didn't you say you want to save your companions? Why do you suddenly regret it now? Or is there something else that you are hiding from me?" Meng Xingzi's expression changed, and he shook his head repeatedly. "How dare I? I just..." Boom! Suddenly, a blood-red thunderbolt fell from the distant sky, and then turned into a figure covered with dazzling blood-red lightning. It was a ferocious spirit, and its aura was boundlessly ferocious. "Die!" The ferocious spirit let out a sharp roar, and his figure turned into a blood-red waterfall, shuttling through the void and whistling over. Boom! He raised his hand and waved, and boundless blood rushed over like a tide. The blood was thick, and it exuded a disgusting rancid and evil aura. Just this blow alone was no weaker than a peak 3rd-layer quasi-emperor. Crash! Lin soon stood still, but there was a bright and blazing sword chi around his body, and it turned into a dense sword formation that crushed and annihilated the rolling blood torrent. An earth-shattering sound of collision resounded, and the sword formation operated. Unparalleled sword chi shot out, and the surging blood torrent was completely minced and annihilated. Before the ferocious spirit could get close, its body was cut into pieces, and it fell to the ground. Ding! A pebble-like source crystal of the Great Way fell, and it was bright, translucent, and flawless. Lin soon caught it in his hand, and he couldn't help but reveal a trace of surprise when he looked at it for a moment. This source crystal of the Great Way was of extraordinary quality, and the essence of the Great Way it contained was like a mist, and it was magnificent and colorful. It was far from comparable to the source crystals of the Great Way he had collected before. At this time, Meng Xingzi was already in a daze. He had come to the 4th layer for a trial, and he had to fight with all his strength to deal with the ferocious spirit just now. But under Lin Sun's attack, it was still vulnerable, and this almost subverted his understanding. After all, his cultivation was at the 3rd level of the quasi-emperor realm, but it was completely insufficient when compared to Lin Sun. Right at this moment, Lin Sun spoke once more. "I'll ask you one more time, where is the overlord of the ferocious spirits?" Meng Xingzi's entire body trembled, and he pointed into the distance. "Fly in that direction for around the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, and you'll see a blood-red mountain. The overlord of the ferocious spirits resides at the peak of that blood-red mountain." swoosh. In the next moment, Lin Sun led Meng Xingzi into action. The heavens and the earth were boundless, and lightning surged in the sky, and it was suffused with an aura of destruction. All along the way, Lin Sun still didn't conceal his aura, and he flew like a bolt of lightning, and he flickered ceaselessly in the sky like a wisp of flowing light. Occasionally, groups of ferocious spirits would appear, and all of them had surging vital energy and terrifying auras, and they seemed like evil spirits that had charged out from hell. Some had transformed into enormous beasts, and some had transformed into evil spirits. Compared to true cultivators, the only difference was that they didn't have intelligence. However, their battle strength was extremely ferocious. It was no exaggeration to say that if a figure like Meng Xingzi, who was one of the 7 great peaks of the Copper Sparrow Pavilion, wanted to train here, he would have to risk his life. Unfortunately, Lin Sun wasn't an ordinary Ju Hui quasi-emperor. Along the way, no matter what ferocious spirits appeared, no matter how ferocious and terrifying they looked, they were all crushed by Lin Sun's advancing footsteps. It was unstoppable. On the other hand, Lin Sun's gains were numerous great Dao source crystals of extraordinary quality. If he wasn't in a hurry, he really wanted to stay and thoroughly sweep through the 4th level of the Hell of Darkness to see how many Great Way source crystals he could obtain in the end. Brother Lin, that's where the overlord of the ferocious spirits resides. Because Lin Sun's attacking speed was too fast, Meng Xingzi saw that blood-red mountain in the distance in less than the time it took for an incense stick to burn. It stood between heaven and earth, majestic, and its entire body was blood-red, as if there were countless blood-red rivers flowing down from the peak of the mountain. Lin Sun couldn't help but frown as he looked from afar. The blood-red mountain was actually piled up by countless bones, and it gave off an extremely horrifying bloody aura of death. At the top of the mountain, an altar was built, and it was madly absorbing the power of the blood-red thunder from the sky. It seems that the intelligent overlord of the ferocious spirits is not simple. While Lin Sun was thinking, a feminine voice leisurely resounded between heaven and earth. It's a pleasure to have a friend come from afar. I wonder what advice you have for visiting my humble abode? The voice alone made Meng Xingzi tremble all over, and his face turned pale. At the same time, Lin Sun saw that on the top of the blood-red mountain, a figure emerged out of thin air. He was wearing a green robe, and he had a handsome face and a smile on his lips. Standing on the top of the mountain with a scroll in his hand, he was like a scholar full of knowledge, completely different from what Lin Sun had imagined. No one would believe that this young man in green robe was the overlord of the 4th level of the Purgatory of Darkness, a dominating existence in this world if he didn't see it with his own eyes. But as Lin Sun ran the clairvoyant eye, he immediately found that the scholarly young man was actually a skeleton. The skeleton was snow-white and translucent, as if it was made of divine iron, giving people a feeling of indestructibility. Between the eyebrows of the skeleton, there was an extremely powerful soul, like a coiled blood python, with its fangs exposed, strange and ferocious. "Well, I didn't expect that you still have the courage to come here, you selfish guy." The man in green robe saw Meng Xingzi, and his eyes showed undisguised contempt. "Shut up!" Meng Xingzi shouted with a ferocious look. "Evil creature, you still don't know that you are about to die. This time I come here to kill you." The man in green robe smiled and said, "It turns out that you, a heartless guy, have found a helper. No wonder you dare to come back." As he said, he looked at Lin Sun with a thoughtful look and said, "My fellow practitioner, I can feel that you are very powerful, far more powerful than ordinary people. If I say that I don't want to be your enemy, can you show mercy?" His voice was clear and calm. It was not like the momentum of a fierce soul. "Are you afraid? Do you want to live?" "Impossible!" Meng Xingzi shouted with undisguised killing intent. "Brother Lin, it is he who killed our fellow disciples of Bronze Sparrow Tower." Lin Sun's eyes flickered. "Didn't you say those people were suppressed?" As long as you hand over that treasure, you can save their lives? Meng Xingzi's face suddenly became unnatural, and he said, Brother Lin, how can you believe the words of that fierce soul? He must have already killed them. The green-clothed man looked up to the sky and laughed. So that's how it is. I finally understand. So you're making a false accusation and pushing all the blame onto me. You're quite insidious. Brother Lin, do it. Meng Xingzi shouted anxiously, as if he was afraid that the man in green robe would say more. But Lin Sun was indifferent. His dark eyes were deep, and he said expressionlessly, Meng Xingzi, at this time, I only have one question. What on earth are you hiding? His voice was piercingly cold. P.S. The analysis of the Master of Heart's combat power has been posted on the WeChat public account of Goldfish. Goldfish will continue to publish an article about Xia Zhi's appearance tomorrow. Chapter 2207. The man in cyan laughed first. It seems that you are not a fool. Meng Xingzi's face darkened. He glared at the man in cyan and then said to Lin Sun, Brother Lin, the fierce soul is as cunning as a ghost. He is deliberately provoking, Lin Sun interrupted. Last chance. There was a frightening chill in his voice. Meng Xingzi's forehead was covered with cold sweat. He looked flustered and said, Brother Lin, what are you suspecting? Don't be fooled by that evil creature. The man in cyan on the top of the mountain in the distance said, Let me tell you. A month ago, this person came here with a group of companions. They happened to see a primordial treasure, so they fought for it together. Unfortunately, I was also there at that time, and I found the treasure earlier than them. Meng Xingzi looked livid and shouted, Shut up! Brother Lin, don't listen to his nonsense. Don't panic. It's okay to listen to his nonsense. Lin Sun raised his hand and patted Meng Xingzi's shoulder. The latter was immediately imprisoned and couldn't speak. He was so anxious that he was in a cold sweat. The azure-robed man smiled and continued, Fellow Taoist, you should know that I am formed from a vicious soul. In your eyes, I am an anomaly that everyone should kill. However, I have awakened my intelligence after all, and I have my own nature and pride. When I fought for the treasure, I defeated Meng Xingzi's companions one by one, but I didn't kill them. I only asked Meng Xingzi to hand over the treasure in exchange for the lives of his companions. But who would have thought, ho-ho? The man in cyan showed a touch of sarcasm. Who would have thought that Meng Xingzi ran away with the treasure alone? At this moment, Meng Xingzi, who was imprisoned there, was extremely shocked and angry. He struggled repeatedly as if he wanted to explain something, but it didn't help at all. Ran away? Lin Sun frowned and looked at Meng Xingzi. He took back the imprisonment power. Is it true? Meng Xingzi gasped and said anxiously, It's fake. It's all fake. How can I abandon my companions for a treasure? This evil creature is obviously slandering and sowing discord. Slandering? Then look who these people are. The green-robed man smiled and waved his hand. A group of figures floated up into appearance. There were men and women amongst them, and all of them were dispirited and on the verge of death. When they saw Meng Xingzi, all of them revealed expressions of rage and hatred, and some even started cursing loudly. Meng Xingzi, we've known each other for hundreds of years, and I've taken you as a brother. Yet you've abandoned all of us for the sake of a treasure. You are truly ruthless. I listened to your orders and risked my life to help you seize the treasure. But what about you? After obtaining the treasure, you ran away by yourself. All of them seemed to be extremely excited, and they seemed as if they wished for nothing more than to skin Meng Xingzi alive. When he looked at Meng Xingzi again, his face was ghastly pale a long time ago. His entire body was shivering, and he had a panicked expression as he cried out loudly with a hoarse voice, How are you still alive? No, all of you must have been controlled by that evil creature. When we were fighting for the treasure, I clearly saw all of you suffer. He looked at Lin Sun and pleaded, Brother Lin, Don't be deceived by that evil creature. I did lie before. After getting the treasure and leaving the 4th floor, I didn't intend to come back at all, because I knew that my companions had died. The reason why I deceived you was that I wanted to get the treasure back from you. But I dare to swear to God that I never abandoned my companions and ran away with the treasure alone when fighting for the treasure. Absolutely not. Like a drowning man, he used all his strength to defend himself. In the distance, the green-robed man sighed and said, "All the evidence is in front of you, but you're still stubborn. It's really pathetic." He looked at Lin Sun and said, "Do you believe me now, Taoism peer?" "Brother Lin." Meng Xingzi collapsed to the ground and screamed anxiously, as if he couldn't explain himself. "I don't believe you." Lin Sun finally opened his mouth. He looked at the green-robed man on the top of the mountain in the distance with his black eyes like lightning. Just 3 words stunned the green-robed man. "You don't believe me?" The green-robed man frowned and said, "Aren't these enough to prove it?" Lin Sun said indifferently, "Let me ask you, the treasure has been taken away. Why do you keep Meng Xingzi's companions alive? Don't tell me that you've expected today's thing to happen, so you've prepared these witnesses in advance." Yes, that's right," Meng Xingzi shouted excitedly as if he had come back to his senses. The green-robed man sighed softly. "My fellow practitioner, I've already said that I have spiritual wisdom, and I have my own nature and pride. When I fought for the treasure, I didn't kill them at all. Even if the treasure was taken away, how could I vent my anger on these people?" "Bullshit." Meng Xingzi gritted his teeth and roared, "You're an evil creature transformed by a ferocious soul. How can you have a merciful heart? Ridiculous. Why do ferocious souls have to do evil?" the green-robed man asked back. He was like a well-read Confucian scholar, showing his displeasure. "Remember, I have spiritual wisdom, and I'm different from those bastards without spiritual wisdom. What's more, if you don't believe me, you should believe these people, right?" The green-robed man pointed to the men and women around him. Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep, and he said something inexplicable. "They are not themselves anymore, and their words are doomed to be untrustworthy." Meng Xingzi was confused and didn't understand. But the green-robed man seemed to understand. He couldn't help but be stunned, and a strange luster appeared in his eyes. "You have already seen through it?" He seemed to know Lin Sun again, and he seemed to be very surprised. Lin Sun sighed softly. "If you didn't summon these people, maybe I would have believed you. But you overreached yourself." Under his heaven's eye, he'd clearly noticed that Meng Xingzi's companions seemed to be no different than an ordinary person, yet their soul cores had been sealed by countless dense and strange blood-colored talismans a long time ago. In short, these people were no different from puppets without souls. When they spoke before, they were also controlled by the green-robed man. In fact, it was because he saw through this that Lin Sun suddenly realized it. He was also shocked, because as he said, he almost believed the green-robed man's words just now. "Brother Lin, you finally believe me!" Meng Xingzi almost cried out. He was so depressed and panicked just now that he almost went crazy. It was no exaggeration to say that he just suspected that he would die with grievances. If you hadn't lied several times before, how could such a thing have happened? Lin Sun glanced at him, and he really couldn't feel any pity for him. It was because Meng Xingzi had lied that he was almost fooled by the green-robed man. Meng Xingzi looked embarrassed, ashamed and self-reproached. He didn't dare to look at Lin Sun's eyes. In the final analysis, he cared too much about that treasure. "It seems that I underestimated you." The smile on the green-robed man's lips disappeared. He stared at Lin Sun with a strange light in his eyes. "Then tell me, why did I spend so much effort to deceive you just to wrongly accuse Meng Xingzi? He doesn't deserve it." His voice was full of disdain. Lin Sun said indifferently, "Because you don't have the confidence to kill me, so you can only take it slowly. If I am really fooled, you will take further action." What action? The green-robed man raised his eyebrows. Lin Sun said, for example, leading me into the mountain where you are, and using the power of the forbidden formation covering the mountain to deal with me? The green-robed man was stunned for a moment. Suddenly he clapped his hands and praised, Great! You are really insightful. It's hard for me not to admire you. After a pause, he said with a smile, however, you guessed wrong. The reason why I deceived you is not that I don't have the confidence to kill you. I just want to have some fun. His eyes were suffused with sadness. I awakened my intelligence a long time ago, but I've been trapped in this damned place that you call the purgatory of darkness for countless years. I want to leave as well. But it just so happens that no matter what I do, I'm unable to struggle free from the energy of this place. After a long time, I will feel very bored, lonely, and tormented. The green-robed man sighed. Lin Sun looked indifferent, without any fluctuation in his mood. The green-robed man seemed to be a scholar full of knowledge, with an open and magnanimous manner. But in fact, he had a glib tongue and was as cunning as a ghost. It was difficult to distinguish whether what he said was true or false. Lin Sun didn't want to distinguish it at all. He turned over his palm, and the broken half of the spear appeared. He said directly, with your wisdom, it should not be difficult to guess that I am here for this treasure. The green-robed man was stunned. It seemed that he didn't expect that Lin Sun was not interested in what he said at all. After a while, he nodded and said, Yes, anyone who gets such a half of the treasure will definitely want to know where the other half of the treasure is. It's easy to guess. Do you know where the other half is? Lin Sun asked directly. The green-robed man couldn't help laughing. Why should I tell you? Why? Lin Sun also laughed. He stepped forward with his clothes fluttering in the wind. An incomparably terrible power spread out, making him seem to become another person in an instant, looking down at the green-robed man like a god. The green-robed man narrowed his eyes slightly and then sighed, It's really boring. The disputes since ancient times inevitably have to be solved by fighting in the end. With a sigh, he waved his sleeves. Boom! The blood-red thunderbolts covering the sky suddenly rolled fiercely, and blood-red figures rushed out of the thunderbolts, like fiends rushing out of hell. Countless evil spirits had appeared, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. Taoism Peer, if you can survive this tribulation, I will tell you where the other half of the heavenless spear is. Chapter 2208. Boom. The world was in chaos and thunder surged. Hundreds of bloody evil souls rushed out like a tide. Each of them had the power of a quasi-emperor, and the strongest one was even comparable to the third level of a quasi-emperor. Seeing this scene, Meng Xingzi was so scared that his face turned green and his hair stood on end. He had never thought that in the blink of an eye, a killing tribulation had come. Now, do you understand that I'm not afraid, but very bored? The laughter of the man in cyan echoed between heaven and earth. To be honest, I'm also very bored. Let's take this opportunity to play. Lin Sun also laughed. As he spoke, his sleeves fluttered and his palms formed an incantation. Up! He stood on the stellar dough and pointed to the northeast. With a deafening roar, countless dense Taoist symbols emerged in the northeast area, colorful and blazing, like a gorgeous rainbow rising to the sky. Kill! A group of bloody evil souls rushed over, ferocious and terrifying. Lin Sun didn't fight with them. His figure flashed and disappeared in place, appearing in another direction. Up! He formed an incantation with his hands and stepped on the ground. With a bang, tide-like Taoist patterns emerged, circling and dancing, shining brilliantly. On the top of the bloody mountain in the distance, the man in cyan gradually frowned. He couldn't understand what Lin Sun was doing. He neither attacked nor dodged. Instead, he seemed to be setting up a formation. But the point was that how could the forbidden formation of Taoist patterns in the world be set up casually? In addition to formation flags, formation plates, formation bases, formation stones, he also needed a source of power to maintain the operation of the formation. The man in cyan really couldn't understand what was the difference between setting up a formation at this time and seeking death. Although he couldn't understand the mystery, he still decided to attack and destroy it. He conveyed a horrible and strange thought, which swept the whole area like a storm: attack with all your strength and interrupt all his actions. The bloody evil souls, like a tide, all rushed towards Lin Sun like crazy, as if they had received the decree of God. Rumble! The world was in chaos, and it was filled with countless bloody figures. The destructive force swept through the 9 heavens and 10 earths, and it almost drowned Lin Sun's figure. This scene was too terrifying. Just think about it: if hundreds and thousands of quasi-emperors were to attack at the same time, how terrifying would that lineup and power be? And all these attacks were directed at Lin Sun. Meng Xingzi had already fled far away before the battle broke out. He didn't dare to hesitate at all. Originally, he thought that Lin Sun would choose to retreat like him, but who would have thought that Lin Sun had no intention of dodging at all? When Meng Xingzi looked at the field, Lin Sun's figure had already been submerged. The world was shaking and the bloody light was rolling. It was impossible to see clearly. This made Meng Xingzi's heart turn cold, and there was only one thought left in his mind: leave or stay. The indistinct ferocious souls were like raging waves as they charged forward, and they covered the heavens and the earth while peerless chaotic flows of energy swept out and crushed space into pieces. The power of the restriction array that covered the entire blood-colored mountain was activated, and it was barely able to neutralize the destructive power. The man in cyan, standing on the top of the mountain, was a little relieved. With his hands behind his back, his pupils flashing a strange luster, he stared at the battlefield in the distance. His cyan robe fluttered in the wind, like a ruler overlooking his own territory. "He's not dead yet. This guy is far more powerful than I expected," he murmured softly. He saw that Lin Sun was still struggling. Even if he was besieged, there was no sign of him dying for a while. But he didn't panic. "Rise! Rise! Rise!" Lin Sun's figure flickered, like a flickering light among countless bloody shadows, drifting erratically. Although he was besieged and almost impenetrable as he operated his cultivation, he could easily crush the opponent's resistance. There were indeed too many enemies, densely packed and seemingly endless, but when it came to combat strength, none of them could enter Lin Sun's eyes. In addition, these ferocious souls were only fighting by instinct, without intelligence and consciousness. This alone made them incomparable to the real quasi-emperors. "Rise!" After pinching out the last incantation, Lin Sun's figure flashed, broke through the siege, and came under the sky. He took a deep breath, and his black eyes couldn't help showing a hint of expectation. Then, he waved his sleeve, tut! A thunderous and obscure tune of the Tao resounded through the surroundings. "This is," the man in cyan on the top of the bloody mountain in the distance frowned, looking at Lin Sun standing proudly under the sky, and suddenly had a bad premonition. The next moment, he was stunned, and his pupils dilated sharply. Numerous swaying and graceful azure-colored lotus flowers suddenly surged into appearance on the battlefield. There were over 1,000 of them, and they covered the heavens and the earth, causing the world to be tainted in a layer of jade green. It was just like the infinite cyan lotus leaves. If one looked carefully, every single azure-colored lotus was large like a millstone, and they swayed in the sky. Every single lotus leaf was formed from countless dense markings of the Tao, and they flowed with a myriad of misty and gorgeous rain of light. And the blooming lotus between the lotus leaves, each had 36 petals, and the stamens were as brilliant as cyan jade. Vaguely, there seemed to be a phantom of a god sitting in it, chanting sutras and resounding through the sky. In a flash, the bloody and gloomy chaotic battlefield seemed to have turned into a sacred world of gods, a country of peace and tranquility, sitting on a big lotus. The man in cyan was stunned, his mind trembling, and an uncontrollable chill surged in his heart. Just looking at it from a distance, he already felt a fatal danger. The formation transforms into the will of the gods, and the Tao has no power. Lin Sun's indifferent voice resounded, like the sonorous voice of the Great Way. Then, among the thousands of green lotuses, the phantoms of gods emerged, and unparalleled divine brilliance shot out. The world seemed to be burning, everything turned into ashes, and the void was incinerated. There were also endless roars of Taoist sounds, sweeping across the sky and earth. The blood-red ferocious souls that surged out like tidewater were like paper, and their figures transformed into ash and vanished amidst the boundless light and sound of the Tao. In an instant, the heavens and the earth seemed to have been cleansed, and not a single ferocious soul remained. All of them seemed as if they'd been wiped out and vanished into thin air. Only the green lotuses were like a world, the gods were like illusions, and peerless divine green radiance flowed and illuminated the world. Bang! The layer upon layer of Tao markings and restrictions that covered the blood-red mountain in the distance rumbled and collapsed like an avalanche, and the entire mountain shook violently before collapsing with a rumble. The azure-clothed man that stood on the peak of the mountain was affected as well, and his figure seemed as if it was swept by a gale as he was blasted flying fiercely, and he was in an extremely sorry state. What a formidable grand formation! What a formidable ability! He coughed up blood repeatedly, and his handsome face was covered in shock and astonishment. Those countless ferocious souls were his subordinates, and every single one of them possessed the might of a peak quasi-emperor. However, they were completely annihilated before such a grand formation. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. This caused the azure-clothed man's mind to suffer an unprecedented blow, and he trembled because of it. All his confidence and pride seemed to have collapsed at this moment. Under the sky, Lin Sun's heart was also filled with unspeakable shock. This formation was called Lifeless Killing Formation, ranked 9th in all heavens, and was created by Master Lu. It had once shone brilliantly in the Taoism War of Ancient Emperors, killing 5 emperors and seriously injuring 8 emperors. It was with this formation that Master Lu, who was only at the quasi-emperor realm, gained the reputation of Formation Emperor Lu. However, what Lin Sun had set up now was just a crude, lifeless killing formation, and its changes in power were also limited. It was far from being comparable with the real lifeless killing formation. Even so, when the formation was in operation, it still killed and cleansed all the ferocious souls in the field. If I can set up a complete lifeless killing formation, how powerful will it be? Lin Sun couldn't help but look forward to it. Qingying gave him the jade slip left by Master Lu, which was full of Taoist classics related to spiritual tattoos written by Master Lu. It not only recorded the lifeless killing formation, but also many other mysteries related to spiritual tattoos. It could be said to be as vast as the sea. With his current attainments in spiritual tattoos, Lin Sun could not help but be deeply inspired and often felt enlightened. For example, the lifeless killing formation displayed before was some of the mysteries that Lin Sun had comprehended in just a few days. Although he only grasped a little bit of it, its power could not be underestimated. Clatter soon, the green lotuses all over the sky turned into light rain and disappeared. Lin Sun looked at the man in green in the distance and said, "Do you still feel bored now?" The man in green took a deep breath, wiped off the blood stains on the corners of his mouth, and sighed, "Your means are superb. It can be said that you can summon clouds and rain with a turn of your hand. How dare I make trouble again?" Saying this, he still asked with some unwillingness, "I'm very curious whether you can break out of the encirclement without the power of the formation just now." Lin Sun said indifferently, "As I said before, I just want to try the power of the formation out of boredom. If I really take action, you will be the first to suffer." The man in green was stunned and couldn't help but sneer, In your eyes, am I so unbearable? Swoosh. Lin Sun took a step forward and came in front of the man in green, casually pressing out with his palm. A cold light flashed in the man's eyes. He had been waiting for this opportunity. However, when he really faced Lin Sun's palm, he suddenly found that he was like in a cage, sealed and shrouded in all directions. There was nowhere to escape and nowhere to hide. He could only face it head-on. Almost out of a kind of fighting instinct, the man in green exhausted all his strength and released it to the extreme. He did not believe that in a head-on confrontation, a character in the third stage of the Quasi-Emperor would be his opponent. Boom! The blood and chi around his body rumbled like 100,000 volcanoes erupting. Incomparably violent laws gushed out, all gathered into a palm print and blasted out. This was the first time since he self-consciously awakened his spiritual consciousness that he had gone all out. Just a single palm print gathered all his life's cultivation. The void was chaotic, divine splendor splashed, and accompanied by a burst of explosion, the man in green's palm print exploded with a loud bang, seeming so vulnerable. And his whole body was directly slapped away, smashing hard on the ground hundreds of feet away, splashing smoke and dust all over the sky. P.S. Big guy, don't rush me. The day after tomorrow, the goldfish will break out 5 times. Chapter 2209. The green-robed man coughed up blood, and his skin cracked like porcelain. He raised his head with difficulty and looked at Lin Sun in the distance in disbelief. The power of one palm was enough to heavily injure him, who had gone all out. Now, are you convinced? Lin Sun looked at him calmly. The green-robed man gasped for breath for a moment. Finally, he sighed and lowered his head. Even if I don't want to accept it, I can't. Where is the other half of the Great Wei Empyrean spear? Lin Sun asked. The azure-clothed man was silent for a moment before he said, I'll die after I tell you, right? Lin Sun didn't deny it. At least you can die more quickly. The corners of the azure-robed man's lips twitched as he said, Actually, I've already guessed that this day would come, but I've been hiding a trace of hope in my heart. Forget it, there's no harm in telling you. If my memories before I awakened my intelligence are correct, the other half of the great Tao Empyrean spear should be in the hands of the 7th floor's Silver Bat Ghost Emperor. With that, he lay down on the ground, closed his eyes and said, Give me a quick death. He suddenly remembered something from a long time ago. At that time, he had just awakened his spiritual wisdom. He had transformed from a cruel and ruthless evil spirit into a spirit that could think, recognize the world, and cultivate on his own. At that time, he felt incomparably frustrated. Even though he possessed intelligence, he was born with original sin. What flowed through his body was a mixture of remnant thoughts, resentment, and filthy blood energy. However, he was not willing to become an intelligent evil spirit. Just like what he said to Meng Xingzi before, did he have to do evil just because he was born as an evil spirit? He had been thinking about this problem for countless years. This was the gloom purgatory, and it was like a cage that he was unable to escape from. He could only accompany those ferocious spirits here, and he wanted to distinguish between good and evil, black and white, right and wrong. It was almost impossible. But now, he was about to die. The azure-robed man suddenly felt a sense of relief. Good and evil, black and white, right and wrong, all of these were no longer important. He only felt lucky. At least, he had truly lived. They were not like those evil spirits who did not know why they were born, nor did they know why they died. They were muddle-headed and did not know who they were. After waiting for a long time, the green-robed man suddenly froze. Why wasn't he dead yet? He couldn't help but open his eyes. The world was boundless and the scenery was still the same. He raised his head with difficulty and looked around, only to find that the young man's figure had long since disappeared. Only a jade slip was quietly placed beside him. He was silent for a moment before he picked up the jade slip. Recorded within it was an inherited Tao scripture called the Great Scripture of Solitude. The azure-clothed man felt as if his heart had been struck by lightning. He was stunned on the spot, and his body started to slightly tremble from an indescribable surge of emotions. After a long while, the green-robed man got up and respectfully knelt on the ground, kowtowing 3 times and 9 times towards the distance. From that day on, the purgatory of darkness lost a vicious soul overlord and gained a scholar who spent his days meditating on the Zen. His green robes were upright and his mind was clear. Countless years later, he chanted a supreme scripture and purified all the evil spirits in the purgatory of darkness. He shook the heavens, and the people of the world called him the Confucian Buddhist emperor. A drink and a peck, all predetermined. A long time ago, the 1,000-feather flower sword, which had just gained sentience, was saved by Shuiya, the successor of Mount Fangsuan, on a stormy night. Shuiya gave it the snow-listening bamboo sword. Later, the 1,000-feather flower sword stood up for Lin Sun in the Great Wall of Imperial Pass to repay his kindness. A long time ago, a little fisherman who grew up by the sea was favored by Li Xianwei, the successor of Mount Fangsuan. The little fisherman later became the founder of Xuanji Taoist sect, Boyazi. A long time ago, to cultivators, a good karma that they inadvertently planted might grow into a towering tree in the years to come. Karma was wonderful beyond words. Brother Lin, I've let you down in the past. I've told some lies and done some stupid things. Meng Xingzi's face was full of shame. When Lin Sun was fighting before, he didn't escape and was even ready to support Lin Sun. But what he didn't expect was that Lin Sun alone swept away all the evil spirits and easily suppressed the vicious soul overlord. Hurry up, the 4th floor is too dangerous. Lin Sun waved his hand. Brother Lin, Meng Xingzi still wanted to say something, but was interrupted by Lin Sun. I have no prejudice against you, so you don't have to blame yourself too much. I hope you won't repeat the same mistakes in the future. After that, Lin Sun floated away. For him, it was not a big deal whether he spared the life of the man in Sian or let go of Meng Xingzi who had deceived him. It was nothing more than a coincidence, and taking advantage of the situation. What Lin Sun really cared about was where the other half of the Great Law Empyrean spear was. Meng Xingzi stood alone for a long time, and finally sighed, turned around and left. He knew that the root of this disaster was nothing more than one word: greed. If he didn't want to control the Great Law Empyrean spear, he would never have lied to Lin Sun. It was no exaggeration to say that Lin Sun had only himself to blame for killing him at that time. The 5th floor of the purgatory of darkness. Lin Sun walked alone in surprise. The rolling evil spirit rushed at his face, producing an oppressive force that was enough to make ordinary quasi-emperors unable to move. But these oppressive forces were easily resolved before they could approach Lin Sun. Qi. A figure in a tattered Taoist robe with green pupils wielded a rusty broken halberd and charged at him. When the halberd was waved, a scene of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood appeared. This was a fierce spirit that was almost as strong as the man in Sian. It was so strong that even a 3rd-step quasi-emperor would find it extremely difficult to resist it. But as Lin Sun struck out with his palm, the figure in tattered Taoist robe exploded and fell into pieces. With a clang, a dazzling Great Way Source crystal fell into Lin Sun's hand. Upon closer inspection, this Great Way Source crystal contained an almost imperceptible fragment of the laws of Emperor Realm. It seems that Buchuan was right. The lower I go, the better the quality of the Great Way Source crystal. Lin Sun put away this Great Way Source crystal and continued forward. The 5th floor was undoubtedly even more dangerous. The weakest of the ferocious spirits was comparable to a 3rd-grade quasi-emperor. Some of the ferocious spirits even carried a faint martial emperor aura, which was extremely frightening. Unfortunately, they were not true Emperor Realm experts and were destined to be no match for Lin Sun. 30 minutes later, Lin soon traveled 30,000 kilometers and killed 59 fierce spirits along the way. He collected 43 Great Way Source crystals, 6 of which contained fragments of the laws of Emperor Realm. In addition, after killing these fierce spirits, Lin soon also collected many broken treasures, all of which were controlled by the fierce spirits and were all primordial Emperor Realm treasures. Unfortunately, all of them lacked spirituality and were far from being comparable to real Emperor Realm weapons. Lin soon threw them to Wu Kei and the spirit of the broken blade as food. Suddenly, Lin soon noticed that there was a fierce battle taking place in a place far away. It was an extremely tall black-robed woman with an extremely fierce aura. She held a pair of fiery red scimitars in her hands, and when she moved, she was like a swift red lightning. Her opponent was a fierce spirit clad in broken bronze armor. Its body was more than 10 feet tall and blood chi surged all over its body, evolving into countless blood-colored Tao lights. This fierce spirit was extraordinarily powerful and clearly possessed spiritual intelligence. When it fought, it was no different from a true third-stage quasi-emperor expert. However, the black-robed woman was even more ferocious. In the blink of an eye, she brandished her scimitars and the fierce spirit screamed in pain. Before long, it was defeated and its body was chopped into countless blood-colored fragments. At the same time, a colorful Great Way Source crystal fell. Clang! The black-robed woman whistled and neatly put away her scimitars and the Great Way Source crystal. After a brief examination, a satisfied smile appeared on her wild and beautiful face. However, she suddenly turned her head and looked into the distance. Yo, after so many years, someone has finally come to the 5th level. As she spoke, she waved her hand. My name is Huolan. I entered the purgatory of darkness 357 years ago and only entered the 5th level 3 years ago. What about you, brother? She was valiant and heroic, and her whole body exuded a sharp and capable aura. Her hair was tied behind her head and her beautiful, wheat-colored face was angular and beautiful. Lin Sun, I just came here 2 days ago. Lin Sun came from afar. After a brief examination, he found that this woman named Huolan had an extremely vigorous aura, far beyond that of ordinary people in the same realm. It made sense. How could a character who had been fighting in the dark purgatory for more than 300 years be ordinary? 2 days ago? Huolan was stunned. She looked Lin Sun up and down with a pair of phoenix eyes as bright as a blade and asked suspiciously, Really? It doesn't matter whether I believe it or not. I'll leave first. As Lin Sun said, he rushed forward. The 5th level was still not suitable for him to practice. Wait a minute. Huolan shouted. Further ahead, there is a fierce spirit transformed from a primitive giant crocodile. It has long possessed wisdom and is extremely fierce. Hey, I'm talking to you. Thank you for reminding me. Lin Sun's voice came from afar without looking back. Huolan frowned. This arrogant guy didn't even listen to her warning. Was he so eager to die? After thinking for a while, she gritted her teeth and chased after him. During these years, she had been fighting alone in this world. It was not easy for her to meet a living person. How could she watch him die? At the same time, Lin Sun also noticed that Huolan had caught up with him. He couldn't help being stunned, but he immediately stopped thinking about it and continued to move forward. Hey, wait for me. You are most likely to encounter an accident if you keep running around like this. Huolan's voice came from behind with a trace of anger. It seemed that she was blaming Lin Sun for not knowing what was good for him. Don't worry, Mississippi. I know what I'm doing. Lin Sun's voice sounded, and he still didn't mean to stop. This annoyed Huolan. Her starry eyes were burning with anger. Arrogant, too arrogant. She had reminded him again and again, but he didn't appreciate it. She couldn't wait for the fierce spirit transformed from the primitive giant crocodile to come out and teach this guy a painful lesson. As soon as this thought came to her mind, she heard an earth-shaking roar in the distance, which made the void tremble and sand and stones fly. Following that, an earth-shattering baleful aura spread out from afar. Chapter 22:10. Lin Sun stopped. He noticed the horrible aura earlier than Hualan did. Boom, boom, boom. The world trembled and the void tumbled violently. In the far distance, a vicious soul as large as a mountain appeared. It looked like a giant crocodile, with 4 limbs like pillars supporting the sky, a head the size of a house, and scarlet scales covering its entire body. Fiendish chi surged like lava, flowing down from its body. Its eyes were as big as a millstone, scarlet and cold, exuding a cruel and ferocious aura. This evil spirit was transformed from a giant crocodile. When it walked, it was like a floating land. In front of it, people looked very small. Roar! It roared to the sky, and the sound waves were like rolling thunder, sweeping across the world. The terrible evil spirit could make people collapse directly. Hualan, who had thought that the ferocious soul could kill Lin Sun's arrogance after it appeared, changed her expression and shouted, "Lin, what are you waiting for? Let's go." Her voice was full of fear and anxiety. She had been wandering in the 5th layer for many years and had fought with this giant crocodile several times. Every time, she could only flee, not daring to fight it head-on. However, Lin Sun said calmly, "Don't panic, Mississippi. It's just a beast with spiritual intelligence. If it dares to block the way, I will kill it." Hualan almost couldn't believe her ears. This guy was not only arrogant, but also insufferably arrogant. She couldn't help but scold, "Do you really want to die? This evil spirit has the power of a half-emperor. Although it's not as strong as a real emperor, it's not something a quasi-emperor can compete with." As she said, she rushed forward to grab Lin Sun and take him away, so that he wouldn't die. Lin Sun dodged her attack and said, "Miss, why don't you watch the battle?" In fact, he was quite touched in his heart. They just met by chance, but Hualan repeatedly reminded him. Even if he was looked down upon, he couldn't be angry at her. Watch the battle? Watch you die. Hualan gnashed her teeth in anger. She had never seen such an insensible guy. "Don't quarrel. Isn't it better for you to die together?" In the distance, the giant crocodile's rumbling voice was full of playfulness and cruelty. Boom! A bloody chain as thick as a python swept out from the body of the ancient giant crocodile and swept towards Lin at an incredible speed. The space around them was thrown into disorder. The blood-colored chains were formed from the laws of the Grand Tao, and they contained a strange and unfathomable fiendish aura that was extremely formidable. Clang! Clang! Hualan's expression changed abruptly, and she unsheathed her 2 scarlet scimitars without hesitation to block this attack. But Lin Sun had already rushed out with his bare hands. He grabbed the blood-colored chain and shook it gently. The blood-colored chain, imprinted with the aura of an Emperor Realm expert, exploded like a dead snake. Lin Sun, on the other hand, had already rushed forward. With a clang, the bright, invincible saber appeared in his hand, and he slashed out. Whoosh! A snow-white saber aura suddenly appeared, illuminating the entire world in a vast expanse of white. The peerlessly swift and fierce saber chi disregarded all obstructions, and it had a domineering aura that struck directly at the heart. It seemed to be able to destroy the shackles of the ages and cut through all restraint. Hualan only felt a stinging pain in front of her eyes, and then she heard a muffled sound, followed by the earth-shattering roar of the ancient giant crocodile. When she opened her eyes again, she saw the sky was dyed with blood. A bloody wound was left on the mountain-like giant crocodile's body, and it was screaming. Lin Sun's tall figure was like a ray of courageous light, holding a saber in his hand, rushing up to the crocodile. Compared with the giant crocodile, his figure was obviously very small, but Hualan felt a kind of domineering and invincible demeanor, a kind of demonic momentum that made her heart tremble. Whoosh! 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 The snow-white saber aura swept across, dancing wildly between heaven and earth, tearing the sky, and completely suppressing the ancient giant crocodile. No matter how it fought back and resisted, it was in vain. Pieces of flesh were cut off and fell down. Soon, the mountain-like giant crocodile was bleeding profusely, and it was as miserable as a bag of bones. Huolan was completely dumbfounded. Was this still the horrible evil spirit that made her run away in embarrassment many times? Why was it like an animal waiting to be slaughtered? Its flesh was constantly cut off, and its bones were exposed. Boom! With a bang, the huge skeleton of the ancient giant crocodile, which had been cut by the saber aura, let out a shrill and unwilling roar, and then fell to the ground with a loud crash. This also made Huolan sober up from the shock. For a moment, her beautiful face changed, and an uncontrollable trance surged in her heart. An evil spirit with the power of a junior emperor was cut to death in just a few blinks of an eye? It was as unreal as a dream. "Girl, do you believe me now?" A clear voice that carried a hint of laughter resounded by her ear. Huolan raised her head instinctively, and she saw the fellow that she'd thought was insufferably arrogant had suddenly appeared before her, and he was grinning at her. There was a hint of ridicule in his words. Huolan took a deep breath, suppressed the shock in her heart, and snorted, "Show off." She turned around and left. "Are you angry?" Lin Sun was stunned. Huolan waved her hand without looking back and said impatiently, "You are so arrogant that I don't need to worry about you. Why should I stay? To be laughed at by you?" Lin Sun touched his nose and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't expect this valiant and wild woman to be so hot-tempered. "Hey!" Lin Sun shouted. "What else do you want?" Huolan still didn't look back. "Thank you for reminding me just now. When I come back from the 9th floor, I'll make it up to you." As soon as Lin Sun finished his words, Huolan felt dizzy, and then a bright source crystal of the size of an alms bowl fell into her hand. It was heavy and diffused with the pure breath of the Great Way. Huolan suddenly turned her head and said angrily, "I'm not that stingy. Why should I compensate you with this thing?" Lin Sun waved his hand with a smile. "We fought side by side, so you should have half of the spoils. This is my rule. You have to take it if you don't want it. See you." As he spoke, he smiled and turned to leave, as if he was afraid that Huolan would return the source crystal. "Humph!" Huolan glared at his back and then looked at the source crystal in her hand. She muttered, "It's such a good treasure. It would be a waste if I don't take it." Then, she realized something and her eyes narrowed. What did that guy just say? He wanted to go to the 9th floor? Wasn't he courting death? "Hey!" Huolan opened her mouth to warn him, but she found that Lin Sun had disappeared in the vast world. Only her voice echoed between heaven and earth. Her beautiful face kept changing. After a while, she stamped her foot and said, "I'd like to see if you will come back to apologize to me. I'll be waiting." The 6th floor of the Purgatory of Darkness. Lin Sun finally felt the long-lost threatening and oppressive aura. The world here was scarlet, broken, desolate, and shrouded in a thick and gloomy aura. As he walked, Lin Sun had to use his true strength to resist the omnipresent oppressive power. This led him to make a judgment. An ordinary third-stage quasi-emperor would be courting death by coming here. In other words, the 6th floor of the Purgatory of Darkness was a place where only martial emperors could come to train. This is only the 6th floor, but it's already so terrifying. Back then, second senior brother was able to fight his way to the 9th floor when he was only a peak quasi-emperor. Lin Sun finally understood how ferocious second senior brother Zhong Qiu was back then. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun began to move forward. Along the way, the oppressive power of heaven and earth was like a tidal wave, forcing Lin Sun to use his cultivation at all times to move forward. Interesting. This is the first time in countless years that I've seen a little quasi-emperor come here to die. Didn't his elders tell him that the 6th floor is not a place that an ant below the martial emperor realm can enter? Suddenly, an erratic and sneaky voice rang out. However, when one tried to identify it, they couldn't find the source of the voice. "No, this is the second time. In ancient times, there was also a fellow at the quasi-emperor realm who came here. His combat strength was even more terrifying than an ordinary martial emperor. Oh really? Then how do you think this little thing compares with that person? Haha, let's see if he can leave alive. Everyone, don't fight over this little prey. This little prey is mine. I like his youthful physique. Even his blood is filled with an alluring smell. Old thing, you're no longer a human being. The noisy voices were like the conversations of evil spirits in the ghost realm. They were whispering to each other, full of a horrifying smell. The sound drifted between heaven and earth, as if there were countless evil spirits hiding in the dark and would rush out at any time. Lin Sun looked calm and turned a deaf ear to them. His tall figure walked alone between heaven and earth, and the sword case on his back glowed with a dull light. Suddenly, a big pale hand broke out of the ground and grabbed at Lin Sun. Its sharp fingertips were surrounded by scarlet light. This sudden scene was enough to frighten everyone, but Lin Sun seemed to have expected it. Or, at the moment when the big pale hand appeared, he didn't hesitate to take action. Swish! The lawless saber rolled up the bright saber chi, like a reverse Milky Way pouring down, and the unparalleled Taoist light illuminated the world. Puff! The big pale hand was cut down, and a huge ravine was cut out on the ground. The earth rolled and shook constantly. In the depths of the ravine, a muffled cry of pain rang out, full of surprise and anger. The sounds of whispers that resounded ceaselessly in the heavens and the earth seemed to have been deterred at this moment, and a short period of silence appeared. The atmosphere suddenly became oppressive, but Lin Sun still seemed to be unaware of it. He glanced at the depths of the ravine and continued to move forward. His figure stood out from the crowd. His indifferent and composed attitude of disregard was like a silent provocation and contempt, and it caused all the ferocious beings that were hiding in the shadows to become restless. The horrible killing intent began to spread between heaven and earth, like the gloom after the coming of the everlasting night. Chapter 22:11. Rumble. The killing intent was like a tide, changing the color of heaven and earth, and the void was in disorder. The originally oppressive and suffocating atmosphere became extremely dignified at this moment. Lin Sun frowned, and there was a faint tingling sensation on his skin. Years of fighting made him realize in an instant that the killing tribulation was coming. But in this situation, the long silent fighting intent in his heart finally showed signs of being ignited, and the chi and blood flowing around him began to boil faintly. Since he entered the purgatory of darkness, this was the first time that he felt pressure and the long-lost impulse to fight. Having cultivated to such a level, it couldn't be said that he was as lonely as snow, but ordinary people were indeed unable to arouse any of his interest. For example, Meng Xingzi, the man in cyan, and the ancient giant crocodile. They were not weak, but for Lin Sun they were really not worth mentioning. But now it was finally different. He came to the purgatory of darkness to temper himself and seek an opportunity to prove the Tao and set foot on the Emperor's way. If there was no oppression and threat, it would be too boring. On the road behind Lin Sun, a drop of scarlet blood quietly condensed in the void. The blood wriggled, and a green pupil opened quietly, looking at Lin Sun's back. Whoosh! A beam of grayish-white light shot out from his pupils, and wherever it passed, the void was silently corroded and a straight black mark was left in its wake. It was as if he had been burnt to ashes. The speed was so fast that it came to Lin Sun in an instant. Puff! With a muffled sound, Lin Sun was hit. The green pupil in the blood bead showed a hint of joy. This gray-white beam was called Light of Flies, which could corrode everything and pollute vitality. No one under the Emperor realm could resist it, because the Light of Flies was a vicious power that could only be controlled by the Emperor realm. But the next moment the joy in the green pupil froze. Lin Sun's figure dissipated like a bubble. Not good. The drop of blood realized that it was not good and was about to dodge. But a big seal with bronze luster had already smashed at it. Great Way lifeless seal. Bang! The blood bead, along with the green pupil within, was instantly blasted into blood-colored powder. In the darkness far away, a sharp cry of pain that tore through the sky sounded out, but it quickly stopped. Lin soon appeared out of nowhere and put away the lifeless seal. As his battle prowess increased, he was able to unleash the true might of the Kunlun Emperor weapons. He could wield them with ease as if they were his own arms. This also made Lin soon more deeply understand the power of Kunlun's Emperor weapons. Each kind of treasure had different magical effects, and its power was extraordinary, far beyond ordinary Emperor weapons. For example, if the lifeless seal was controlled by a true Emperor realm law, then its might could even shatter a river of stars and collapse the sky, and it possessed boundless destructive might. The lawless saber, for example, could ignore all laws in the universe, including Emperor realm laws. This kind of disregard was not blocking, nor was it dispelling. Instead, it was treating the myriad of techniques as if they were nothing, and not even a single leaf could touch him. With Lin Sun's current strength, he could easily control the Kunlun Emperor weapons, but it was impossible for him to release the full power of these Emperor weapons, unless he could prove his Tao and become a true Emperor. Without thinking too much, Lin Sun continued to move forward. The world was dark and gloomy, and undercurrents were surging. The boundless blood and evil spirits were like a sweeping storm, howling and whistling in the void, like the wailing of ghosts and the howling of wolves. The faintly discernible whispers rang out once more. This guy is tricky. In my original memory, the treasure in his hand seems very familiar. Just looking at it from a distance, it makes my heart tremble with fear. This guy is nothing to worry about, but the treasure in his hand is full of threat. Oh, threat? I think it's an opportunity. Whoever can get the treasure in his hand, maybe can be the best in this world. These conversations were not concealed. Lin Sun heard them and instantly made a judgment in his heart. In the 6th level of Purgatory of Darkness, there were many evil spirits with spiritual intelligence, and they should have the power of Emperor Realm. Otherwise, they would never dare to underestimate and despise a peak 3rd stage quasi-emperor like him. And this kind of evil spirit with wisdom, who knew how to analyze the pros and cons and make plans, was undoubtedly the most terrible and the most difficult to deal with. If it were those evil spirits without spiritual intelligence, they would have already swarmed to kill him when they saw him. Buzz. Suddenly, the space in the distance surged as a figure condensed into form, and it transformed into an old man with a hunched back and a violet bamboo cane in his hand. His hair was sparse, and his skin was branded with scars that looked like fish scales. His eyes flowed with a strange red light, and he was like an old ghost that had crawled out of hell. He looked horrifying. "Hand over the treasure in your hand, and I'll let you go. Otherwise, the 39 companions here will tear you apart and eat you," the old man said in a hoarse voice like a poisonous snake spitting out its tongue, which made people's scalp numb. Lin Sun glanced at the purple bamboo stick in the old man's hand and said, "Leave this thing, and I'll let you die quickly." This purple bamboo stick was 7 feet long, as thick as a child's arm and crystal clear. There were wisps of obscure chaotic aura on it. It should be a primordial treasure, and its quality was almost perfect. It was extremely precious and rare. The old man was stunned. He didn't expect that a young man like Lin Sun would be tougher and more domineering than him. The evil spirits who were watching all this in secret couldn't help whispering. They were all very surprised and didn't know where Lin Sun's confidence came from. "I've given you a chance." The old man's eyes glowed with a strange light, and the purple bamboo stick in his hand gently tapped on the ground. Boom! A dense and violent purple thunderbolt poured down from the void, like thousands of snakes dancing wildly, and filled with the fierce aura of Emperor Realm Law, and rushed towards Lin Sun. Lin Sun didn't dodge, but rushed up to meet it. His body was bright, and a deep abyss was developed. Endless light flowed in it, and his power suddenly rose to the extreme. Boom! the lifeless seal roared out, blooming with a bronze light. It was as heavy as a mountain moving horizontally, and it crushed the void into powder, caused the world to tremble, and crushed the rolling purple thunderbolt. Lin Sun had already swung his fist to kill the old man. His fist's strength was like an abyss, devouring the heaven and earth, and seizing all creation. The old man snorted coldly and fought against it. But in just a moment, he was suppressed by Lin Sun's fist strength to the point that he couldn't raise his head. The blood in his body rolled, and his face changed. Even if he waved the purple bamboo stick, it was still severely suppressed by the lifeless seal. The purple bamboo stick buzzed and wailed, and it was almost out of control and flew out of his hand. Die. In an indifferent voice, a Taoist furnace was condensed in front of Lin Sun. It flowed with hundreds of millions of mysterious lights, and it seemed to have the power to suppress the past, the present, and the future. Open! The old man roared. His eyes were scarlet and bleeding, his muscles were bulging, and the blue veins on his forehead were bulging. The terrifying bloody light rushed out from his body like a landslide and a tsunami, and it rushed towards the Taoist furnace. But in the blink of an eye, all his resistance was destroyed by the Taoist furnace. His head, neck, and body were all shattered, and blood splattered everywhere. Looking from afar, the old man's entire body had actually been crushed alive. This was a fierce spirit that had condensed spiritual intelligence, and it was no weaker than the first level of the Emperor realm. Moreover, it possessed a primordial treasure, but it was completely suppressed by Lin Sun, a mere quasi-emperor. Boom! Blood splattered everywhere, and the unparalleled turbulence swept out. The old man's soul was completely destroyed. Old bamboo monster died just like that? How could he be so nature-defying? A surprised voice sounded in the dark, and it floated between heaven and earth. The fierce spirits were obviously shocked. Lin Sun didn't care about all this. He put away the purple bamboo stick, and after a brief examination, he couldn't help but be shocked. This was a primeval treasure indeed, and it was called the Violet Solitude Lightning Bamboo. Its appearance was miraculous, and it contained a strand of terrifying quintessence laws of the Tao of lightning. Lin Sun didn't hesitate to put it away. Even if he couldn't use it, he could give it to Wu Kei and the spirit of the broken blade. After the old man died, he left behind a great Tao source crystal that looked like a flying sword. It sprinkled a faint purple rain of light, and although it was only the size of an egg, its quality was extremely shocking. Lin Sun held it in his hand and examined it. He found that there was a fragment of the law of thunder within the great Tao source crystal, and it was pure and dazzling. Good treasure. Lin Sun put it away. There was no need to comprehend a treasure like this. As long as he refined it, the law of thunder would become a part of his cultivation. After putting it away, Lin Sun took out a great Tao source crystal of average quality. As he continued forward, he absorbed energy to replenish his exhausted strength. Although he hadn't used up much of his strength, the road ahead was destined to be filled with killing. He probably wouldn't have much time to replenish his strength, and when they saw this scene, the spirits of the monsters in the dark were shaken. This kid is replenishing his strength. Did this mean that although his combat strength was nature-defying, he wouldn't be able to last for too long? For a moment, the world was filled with killing intent, and it seemed like it was ready to make a move. Lin Sun saw all of this, but his expression remained unchanged as he continued forward. At this moment, he seemed to be using himself as a bait to attract the enemy to jump out from the dark. This was undoubtedly very dangerous, but it was also the most energy-conserving method. Otherwise, if he took the initiative to chase and search, he might fall into the enemy's trap instead. After all, he was just an outsider. Those fierce spirits were the masters of the 6th level of the purgatory of darkness, and they were undoubtedly the most familiar with the environment here. They had an absolute geographical advantage. Whoosh! Suddenly, in the void ahead, an ancient tree made of bronze appeared. Its branches towered into the sky, and they were as sharp as swords. A pair of cold eyes opened on the trunk. As the ancient bronze tree swayed, the dense branches emitted a bloody light that shot into the sky, startling the world and causing all living things to tremble. Before Lin Sun could react, a fierce beast that looked like a Kylan walked out from another direction. It had antlers, and its pupils were surging like whirlpools. When it walked, unparalleled killing intent spread like a tide. I didn't expect the old bronze tree to attack together with the Kylan demon emperor. Looks like the death of old bamboo monster made these two ferocious fellows become more cautious. Chapter 22:12. The old copper tree had already awakened its spiritual wisdom in the ancient times. Its origin is the root of the Kunwu divine tree. Over the years, it has devoured and absorbed countless remnant souls and willpower of the martial monarch realm. It has become extremely powerful. An ordinary first-level martial monarch is no match for it. A cold voice said, "The Qilin Emperor is not simple either. His original body is the remnant soul of the fire Qilin. Over the years, the number of people who have died in his hands is not small." The voice drifted in the gloomy and oppressive world. It was like an undisguised threat, not afraid of being heard by Lin Sun. Lin Sun's expression changed. However, it was not fear or dread, but surprise. He'd never imagined that the ancient tree whose branches towered into the sky and seemed to be constructed from bronze branches and leaves was actually formed from a root of the Kunwu divine tree. Now, he already had the origin of the Fusang tree and a divine wood that was suspected to be the builder wood. He only lacked the Kunwu divine wood and the dark parasol divine wood. If he could gather these four kinds of primordial divine wood born in the origin of chaos, then nourish them with the chaotic life soil, the five-colored wondrous soil, the pure turbid star soul sand, the primordial water, and other divine materials, he could give birth to a chaotic origin tree sapling. At that time, the sapling would be immeasurably beneficial to the cultivation of emperors. Whoever could control a chaotic origin tree would have the foundation to comprehend the law of chaos and control the power of chaos. Over the years, Lin Sun had collected intermittently and only obtained a part of the origin of the Fusang tree's soul, a divine material that was suspected to be the builder wood, a handful of five-colored wondrous soil, and a piece of chaotic life soil. It was easy to imagine how difficult it was to collect all these divine woods and divine materials. It was something that could only be found by chance. Boom! In the distance, the old bronze tree charged over. Thousands of branches were dancing like divine chains of order, with a scarlet and dazzling radiance of the law shrouding the sky. The world was in chaos and the void was shattered. On the other side, a fierce beast that looked like a Qilin rushed over, moving through the void with incredible speed. When a giant claw slapped out, it set off a monstrous divine light of the law of Emperor. The two fierce souls with the power of emperors launched a thunderous attack as soon as they attacked. It was swift and fierce enough to make ghosts and gods tremble. At the same time, Lin Sun made his move as well. His silhouette seemed to be traversing the abyss of heaven and earth as he manipulated the lawless blade to fight against the two monarch realm souls. His long hair fluttered in the wind as his black pupils erupted with lightning. His cultivation was displayed to the extreme, and his murderous might shook the heavens and earth. This expanse of the heavens and the earth fell into turmoil, while all sorts of terrifying phenomena appeared. The ferocious creature that was watching everything in the dark was stunned. The old bronze tree and the Qilin demon Dharch attacked together, but they were only evenly matched with the young man at the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. This almost caused them to be stupefied. It was difficult to imagine how there was someone in this world who could surmount the heavenly chasm of the emperor realm. He was simply a monster. Thinking back to the ancient times, the extremely arrogant and conceited person only managed to survive by relying on various secret treasures. But the young man in front of him was obviously different. Rumble! The heavens collapsed and the earth split apart. The surroundings were in chaos. Lin Sun killed heartily and wantonly. His figure was like an abyss swallowing all 10 directions. There was a faint sign of suppressing the old bronze tree and the monster Emperor Qi. In particular, when he waved his saber, he cut off the branches of the old bronze tree that were dancing wildly like divine whips. It was incomparably fierce and indestructible. This enraged the old bronze tree. He roared again and again, and his ferocious might became more and more terrifying. The monster Emperor Qi didn't have it easy either. Although he was fast and violent like lightning, every time he collided with Lin Sun, his blood and qi were shaken and he couldn't get close to Lin Sun. This made him both surprised and incredulous. Lin Sun didn't care about this. He galloped on the battlefield like a demon, invincible and invincible. The more he fought, the stronger he became, and his momentum rose steadily. Bang! Not long after, the lifeless seal roared and the monster Emperor Qi was directly smashed away. His fur was stained with blood, and his tendons and bones collapsed. Obviously, even if he and the old bronze tree attacked together, they were no match for the monster Emperor Qi. However, just as Lin Sun was about to follow up and kill the monster Emperor Qi, a sudden change occurred. A giant white-boned bird with broken wings and a body burning with ghostly fire rushed out and pounced on Lin Sun. Its sharp claws were like divine weapons, revealing incomparable sharpness. This was another monster Emperor Realm evil soul. Lin Sun's expression didn't change, and he was as calm as before. Only his eyes were burning with the desire to fight fiercely. In the blink of an eye, he was fighting against the 3 Emperor Realm vile souls alone. His invincible killing aura was firmly restrained. But even so, Lin Sun was still fighting calmly despite being besieged. Every move he made was far beyond the ordinary and unparalleled power. This made people's hearts tremble, and the evil souls who were watching secretly were even more shocked. If they weren't so sure of Lin Sun's cultivation, they would have suspected that he was a monster emperor who deliberately concealed his cultivation. It was incredible. Although these evil souls had been trapped in this world for a long time, they had already condensed spiritual wisdom and retained a lot of instinctive knowledge in their memories. This made them very clear how incredible it was to surpass the natural chasm of the monster emperor realm and fight against a monster emperor across a great realm. The most terrifying thing was that Lin Sun was fighting 1 against 3. Boom! Suddenly, a black cloud swept over from afar and turned into a woman with a snake's head and a human's body. She had a graceful body and a huge snake tail. She held the giant bone axe in her hand and rushed over with great force, shaking the world. This was the 4th monster Emperor Realm evil soul to attack Lin Sun together and kill him in the field. At this moment Lin Sun's figure flashed. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Greenwood, scarlet fire, yellow earth, greenwood, black water, and platinum tau rushed out together, each holding a different monster emperor weapon, and rushed to different opponents. This sudden change shocked the old copper tree, Kylan demon emperor, the giant bone bird, and the snake-headed woman. Their faces changed abruptly. One of them was already difficult to deal with, but now there were 5 more. This was simply despairing. I'm not afraid of one-on-one. But what about a group fight? In the indifferent voice, Lin Sun himself and the 5 doppelgangers of the Great Path rushed to different opponents. Like a group of demons attacking, they emitted different kinds of power and momentum. Boom! The old bronze tree was the first one who couldn't bear it. It was attacked by Lin Sun and Greenwood Taoist body together. Its branches were broken in the violent torrent of power. Its trunk was severely damaged with numerous cracks. Why don't you help him? If he survives, you will also suffer. The old copper tree let out a shrill cry. The next moment, the old copper tree's voice stopped abruptly. It was completely suppressed by Lin Sun's tower of endless Tao and put into the tower. Without hesitation, Lin Sun and Greenwood Tao body rushed to other enemies. Boom! The world was in chaos. 6 Lin Sun went to battle together, seemingly invincible. Those monster Emperor Realm evil souls were defeated, and soon they were all injured. This made them tremble in fear, and they finally felt fear. But at this time, figures rushed out from the dark one after another. There was a headless man completely covered in dense armor, holding a long spear, cold and murderous. There was a pale-skinned monk with sinful and evil aura, holding a string of prayer beads made of white bones in his hands. There was a blurred figure riding the black torrent. With a wave of his hand, countless ferocious blood shadows rushed out from the void. There was, in just a moment, 7 or 8 more monster Emperor Realm evil souls appeared in the field. Facing this scene, even a true Emperor Realm expert would be shocked and feel despair. And in such a dangerous situation, Lin Sun finally felt great pressure and threat. Instead of being shocked, he smiled and said, "It should have been like this long ago." His original body and the 5 clones of the Great Path all had their auras rumbling. At this moment, they released and performed the extreme of their cultivation. Dharma Scripture of Solitude, Infinite Devouring Scripture, Taishen Sword Scripture, No Return, Green Lotus Cave Method, 9 Cauldrons World Suppression Scripture, Great Quietus Thunder Scripture, all kinds of supreme Taoist scriptures were performed by different Tao doppelgangers. For a moment, the power reflected and reflected each other, dyeing the world into a magnificent color. And Lin Sun's Tao body operated the chaotic domain to the extreme, sometimes turning into a deep abyss, sometimes evolving into a chaotic furnace. The lawless saber, lifeless seal, directionless flag, broken blade and other monster emperor weapons also swept across the battlefield, bursting with different powers and mysteries. Boom! The 6th level of purgatory of darkness was completely shaken, lightning flashed, thunder roared, Taoist light fell like rain, and divine brilliance was like the sea. This could be called a battle of monster emperors. If it happened in the outside world, it would definitely cause a sensation in the heavens, and countless people would be shocked. And it was destined that no one could imagine that Lin Sun alone could fight against so many monster Emperor Realm evil souls. Kill! 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 On the battlefield, Lin Sun's killing was boiling, and he fought like a madman. His whole body seemed to be burning, and his Taoist karma was revealed to the world. No one knew that this was also the first time Lin Sun went all out in a battle since he reached the consummation of the 3rd step of Quasi-Emperor Realm. The monster Emperor Realm evil souls were all shocked and almost went crazy. More than a dozen of them gathered together to attack, but they could not do anything to a Quasi-Emperor Ju Fu. How could they believe this? No matter what, we must kill this man. His Taoist skills are heaven-defying, and he must have mastered some unknown Taoist scriptures. If we kill him, we may be able to obtain some unexpected good fortune. Those treasures are also very impressive. The monster Emperor Realm evil souls also went all out, and each of them was full of vigor as they fought desperately to kill Lin Sun, and then divide the treasures and Taoist scriptures on him. But how could Lin Sun let them get what they wanted? Tut! Suddenly, his Tao body let out a Taoist sound, wanting to kill the already injured monster Emperor Qi. At the same time, in other directions, the 5 doppelgangers that were fighting with the other monster Emperor Realm evil souls all withdrew at the same time, and attacked the monster Emperor Qi from all directions. This kind of joint attack almost made the monster Emperor Qi's soul come out of his body, and he chose to dodge and escape without hesitation. Unfortunately, it was a step too late. Boom! In the earth-shattering explosion, the monster Emperor Qi's body directly exploded, and was drowned by the endless blazing Taoist light turbulence. His soul was destroyed. Chapter 22:13. Clatter. Blood splashed. The death of the Kylin demon emperor made all the Emperor Realm evil spirits tremble. They couldn't believe that under such a siege, a Ju Hui quasi-emperor not only could not be suppressed, but also had the ability to kill. And from this moment on, Lin Sun launched a counterattack. The 5 doppelgangers followed the main body and attacked together, no longer fighting separately as before. In this way, the power generated was even stronger. The void exploded, and a string of prayer beads made of white skeletons whizzed over, emitting a strange grayish-white Buddha light that enveloped the world. This was a terrible treasure that targeted the spirit. The grayish-white Buddha light produced a devouring power that could corrode people's spirit and turn them into ashes. Boom! Lin Sun's scarlet fire Taoist body performed the eyes of burning ashes. Flames swept across the sky and hit the string of prayer beads away. The white skeletons were burned and wailed. At the same time, Lin Sun attacked with a punch, collapsing the chest of the monk who was rolling with sinful and evil aura and sending him flying backward. Puff! On the other side, the platinum Taoist body was already ready, and without hesitation, he used the thorn of sharpness to penetrate the monk's head. A series of actions happened almost instantaneously. When all this was over, the Emperor evil spirit that looked like a monk had been completely destroyed. At the same time, Lin Sun, together with the 3 Taoist bodies of black water, yellow earth, and greenwood, had set their eyes on another opponent. Unlike other strong people who fought side by side, Lin Sun and the 5 Taoist bodies were one, and their minds were connected. When they cooperated with each other, it could be said to be seamless and invulnerable. This was also the reason why Lin Sun's killing power was boundlessly terrifying when he was fighting. Clang! Before long, the lifeless seal collided with a huge white bone axe, producing a deafening roar. The one controlling the huge white bone axe was the graceful woman with the head of a snake and the body of a human. While her treasure was restrained, she was also trapped by the 2 Taoist bodies of black water and greenwood. "Help me!" she screamed, unable to hold on any longer. In fact, other Emperor Realm fierce souls nearby were trying their best to attack Lin Sun, but they were all resisted and resolved by Lin Sun and other Tao bodies. Soon, the snake-headed woman let out a shrill and unwilling hiss, and was killed on the spot by the directionless flag wielded by the greenwood Taoist physique. As for the woman's death, it had only been a moment since the monk's death. The sight of death was driving the great Emperor Realm souls crazy. When Lin Sun and his doppelganger gathered together, they were almost invincible. They were good at both offense and defense, and they controlled all kinds of Kunlun Emperor weapons. The Taoism they displayed was also the supreme Taoist scriptures in the world. Under such circumstances, fighting him was simply like going against a lofty and towering mountain, and no matter how they charged forward, it was impossible to shake him. Soon, the headless man covered in armor was split open by Lin Sun's saber. Almost at the same time, the yellow Taoist body rushed forward and condensed the seal of all living beings to kill him. Boom! The headless man's body exploded, and blood spurted high into the air. Since the beginning of the battle, this was the 5th Emperor Realm fierce soul to be killed, after Old Bamboo, the Kylan Demon Emperor, the monk, and the snake-headed woman. The old copper tree was suppressed in the Tower of Endless Tao. Less than a quarter of an hour had passed. In this short time, Lin Sun was not even injured, not to mention being suppressed. "How is this possible?" someone shouted in shock and anger. "Kill! Whoever doesn't use all his strength will die," someone roared. More people looked solemn and gloomy. They didn't say a word, but their hearts were full of shock and uneasiness. If the opponent was an Emperor Realm strong, they could reluctantly accept it. But the point was that the opponent was just a quasi-emperor, which was the most difficult thing for them to accept. After all, such a thing had never happened since ancient times. Boom! The battle became more and more fierce. The world was turbulent and chaotic, and the smell of blood continued to spread. Endless Taoist light and fierce qi swept across, causing the 6th level of purgatory of darkness to be in complete turmoil. A quarter of an hour later, 4 more Emperor Realm fierce souls died in different ways, but without exception, they all died miserably. At this time, there were only 7 Emperor Realm fierce souls that besieged Lin Sun. Looking at Lin Sun again, whether it was himself or his 5 doppelgangers, they were all unscathed. Their momentum was like a rainbow, and they fought like a madman, wantonly attacking as if they were invincible. This was already comparable to sweeping through his opponents and sweeping away everything in his path. Whoosh! Just as Lin Sun was about to deal with the giant white bone bird with broken wings and burning flames, the latter suddenly flapped its wings, tore the sky, and teleported away. It escaped. This was also the first Emperor Realm Fierce Soul to flee in fear since the beginning of the battle. Lin Sun didn't chase after it, but changed his target to other fierce souls. But in the following time, the fighting spirit of these fierce souls seemed to be shaken. As long as they were targeted by Lin Sun, they would choose to escape without hesitation when he intended to kill them. Some of them succeeded and were lucky enough to keep their lives. Some of them couldn't even escape and were killed on the spot. Let's go! This man is no match for us. Run! It didn't take long for the remaining Emperor Realm Vile souls to lose their will to fight, and they began to flee in all directions while crying for help. No one dared to fight Lin Sun head-on anymore. Or in other words, Lin Sun's fighting strength had already made them feel fear and despair. Lin Sun's fighting spirit was burning, and he was full of killing intent. How could he stop now? He took a deep breath, and the doppelgangers that gathered around him flew in different directions to kill the fleeing enemies. His original body fixed its eyes on a man in a black robe that seemed to be made of smoke, and began to chase with all its might. From this moment on, Lin Sun completely grasped the initiative, and launched a counterattack in the 6th level of the Purgatory of Darkness. A quarter of an hour later, near a barren canyon, Greenwood Taoist body looked around and waved the Wufang flag in his hand. Boom! Innumerable sharp divine lights whistled out like divine rainbows descending from the sky, and they enveloped the canyon in the distance. The canyon was directly destroyed and the ground caved in. Many enormous and densely packed holes of unfathomable depth appeared. A great Emperor Vile soul rushed out from one of the holes. His face was covered in dust and dirt, his body bloody and mangled. It was a pitiful sight. It was about to escape when Greenwood Taoist body blocked its way. "Can you escape?" Greenwood Taoist body waved the Wufang flag, and the fierce soul was drowned in the next moment by the sharp divine light. Southwest. The platinum Taoist body wore a white robe and wielded a broken blade. He was fighting fiercely with an Emperor Fierce soul that looked like an elephant. This was the opponent he had caught up to. Moreover, the opponent couldn't hold on much longer. But at this moment, an ethereal shadow suddenly shot out of the darkness, controlling a white bone flying sword. It attacked the platinum Taoist body from behind with Qin Shi. From beginning to end, it didn't make a sound, and didn't even emit a trace of energy. It was extremely strange. The Emperor Fierce soul that looked like an elephant saw this, and a trace of wild joy flashed through its scarlet eyes. But in the blink of an eye, this wild joy was replaced by shock and terror. Then Lin Sun's scarlet flame Taoist body suddenly teleported over. He waved the broken Empyrean Tao spear and stabbed it at the ethereal shadow. Boom! The shadow was caught off guard, and it staggered and flew backward, groaning in pain. Almost at the same time, the platinum Taoist physique raised his blade and slashed down, killing the Emperor-level Vile soul that looked like a giant elephant. Its head flew into the air, and blood dyed the sky red. The platinum Taoist body turned around and walked toward the opponent that was fighting the scarlet flame Taoist body. Northeast, southeast, similar scenes were playing out. Their opponents fled, and they were all alone. But at the same time, Lin Sun's main body and clone split up to pursue them, and a bloody massacre ensued. In the process, some Emperor Fierce souls that had been hiding in the dark couldn't help but attack when they saw Lin Sun's main body and clone split up. For a time, the 6th level of the Purgatory of Darkness was filled with a chaotic scene of fighting and turmoil. After half an hour, The number of Emperor Fierce souls that died in the hands of Lin Sun and his 5 clones had reached an astonishing 21. At the same time, although Lin Sun was not injured, he felt a burst of exhaustion. After all, he was only at the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. Although the power of the Taoism and the imperial weapons that he used with his 5 clones were extremely powerful, it also consumed a lot of physical strength. If it weren't for his strong cultivation, he wouldn't have been able to hold on for half an hour. Although there are many Emperor Fierce souls here, most of them are comparable to the first level of Emperor realm. They can't really pose a fatal threat to me. However, it's good to practice here for a period of time. While Lin Sun was thinking, he planned to call back his 5 clones, stop for a while, and take a rest. But at this moment, a blood-stained broken sword tore through the sky and slashed down. The incomparably ferocious sword caused the heavens and earth to dim. It was extremely terrifying. Clang! The bright saber steamed and blocked the attack of the broken sword. Then, an incredible scene occurred. The broken sword flashed lightly in the void and turned into a completely black, cold-looking, crimson-haired youth. He was only 2 feet tall, and his entire body was shrouded in crimson light. His resentment soared to the heavens. Obviously, this was a sword spirit with spiritual intelligence. The soul of the broken sword with curse and resentment has appeared again. Hidden in the shadows, one of the Emperor-level vile souls noticed this, and his heart trembled in disbelief. It had been a very, very long time since the soul of the broken sword had appeared. The 2-foot-tall red-haired boy stared at Lin Sun with cold eyes and said, "Leave the sword case on your back, and I promise that no one will dare to stop you from leaving." Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. This sword spirit should also be a fierce soul, and it had condensed spiritual intelligence and recognized the extraordinary bronze sword case on his back.